Hello friends, this is Fictional Vortex. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto inherited the power of Red Goddess. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Father Yayoi enjoyed the rain. It reminded him of a simpler time earlier in his life when the burdens of adulthood were not but a distant concern. He remembered the feeling of boyhood spring after the low-ing winter and the freedom the rain signified. Now, approaching his late 60s, the rain brought back memories, and that made him content. He took a seat on the front steps leading to the door of his church with a cup of tea to watch the dirt road leading into town. The town, and as a result, his parish, were small by all standards due to their location being far away from the trade centers of the Land of Fire. Only farmers and the occasional lost merchant frequented the town, and fewer still entered his church. The position, granted to him by the Mother Superior, was given as a reward for a lifetime of service. This semi-retirement finally allowed him time to rest. At times, he missed the hustle of a larger cogeneration. Still, he mostly enjoyed the slowness of rural life. Away from the ills that plagued the world, everything seemed ordinary until the stranger arrived. The man came down the road towards the town in a black cloak with a hood that obscured his face. Father Yayoi instantly knew that the stranger was neither a farm nor a merchant, sensing a trained movement only the ninja developed over years of training. He prepared to go inside when the shinobi stopped in front of the church. "Are you open?" Something about the voice sent a wave of panic down Father Yayoi's spine. It seemed hollowed and hopeless, more fit from the damned soul than a man of flesh and blood. A part of him, much more significant than he would have admitted to anyone, wanted to rush inside and slam the door shut. However, his oaths to Amaterasu demanded him to care for all her children. Regardless of his misgivings, "The houses of Our Lady of Eternal Light are always open, my son." Father Yayoi tried to muster the warmth that his courage allowed. "Please come inside and dry yourself." He led the stranger inside the church, gesturing to one of the pews. "Take a seat. Would you like something warm to drink? Tea or coffee?" "No, I shall not be here for long." The man bowed once before the sacred image of the sun goddess and muttered a small prayer. "Forgive me, it has been over 20 years since I've been to a church. Our Lady Welk owns all her children home no matter how far they've wandered." Father Yayoi sat next to the man and brought his palms together. "What troubles you, child?" The stranger remained silent, head directed at the holy image of Amaterasu. Then, a single arm, the only one the man had due to the emptiness of the other side, emerged from the cloak and took a small prayer book from the pew in front of them. He flipped through the pages before stopping on a prayer meant for the salvation of the recently departed. "Do you believe in evil?" Father Yayoi's eyes widened at the question. "Men do terrible things. I am not talking about men." The stranger's tone took a near manic edge. "I am speaking of real evil, evil that exists beyond mankind's understanding. Infinite and malevolent. Amaterasu's light can overcome all the troubles of the world. There is no darkness she cannot overcome." "You're wrong." Father Yayoi bit back a rush of anger at such a response. He tried to calm his nerves, reminding himself to follow the goddess's example of patience with the suffering souls of the world. The man next to him was sick with something, mental or physical. "I have made a horrible mistake." The stranger turned to another page offering a prayer of forgiveness. "We all made a mistake. No sin is too great for her mercy. The Queen of Heaven promised all her children to welcome them home if their hearts were open to her light. Blessings of the highest upon us all." Father Yayoi's hands came together again in prayer. A deep chuckle interrupted the prayer as the man stood up. He pulled back the hood to reveal a pale face topped with black hair that ran to his shoulders. "No forgiveness or peace is awaiting us now. We, all of humanity, are doomed to an ocean of pain and torment." Father Yayoi's suspicions of mental illness were confirmed as the man burst into mad laughter. He slid away from the man and stood, placing 2 rows of pews between them in case the stranger grew violent. "My son, please sit. Allow me to call the doctor." "No." The man swung around with a kunai pointing at the priest. "How could we be so stupid? How could we not see her evil? She tricked us into believing that we were doing a good thing. This was all part of her plan. Everything. We removed the last obstacles to her rise and now find ourselves at the end of all things. Please, my child, put down the knife. Father Yayoi took another step backward and crouched behind a pew. You are sick. The man's mania turned into despair. I am sorry, Sarada. We would never have brought you into this world if I had known. I have damned you by giving you life. He moved to stand in front of the statue of Amaterasu. I will not watch my family die again. We can save them. Father Yayoi decided to play into the man's delusions. Do not lose hope, friend. Save them. The man raised the kunai to his neck, pressing it enough to draw a thin line of blood. I cannot even save myself. He started to carve his throat open and did not stop until dropping to the floor in a red pool. Mom has a boyfriend. Wonderful. He is really nice. She really likes him. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. The last thing Naruto Uzumaki wanted was to blow up at his daughter during her once-a-week visit. She was only 10 and could not possibly understand her words' effect on him. The concept of divorce went beyond her innocent mind. He forced a happy grin to mask the anger swelling within, pulling his youngest into a tight embrace. No matter what happened, he would always love Himawari, his little sunflower. As long as he treats you nicely, then I like him as well. He rubbed her head gently. Why before planting a single kiss on her forehead? The girl squealed and pulled him into another tight hug. I like you better. Daddy is the best. At least one of his children liked him. And you are the best girl in the entire world. Naruto released the girl and turned to the paperwork spread across his desk. He always dreamed of being Hokage but never realized how miserable the job would be. Between paperwork, meetings with representatives of the daimyo, and appeasing the many factions within Konoha, it surprised him that the third Hokage lived so old given the stress. It took every bit of energy from him, robbing him of a normal life with a happy family. However, he would do it all over again for the sake of the village he loved. Say, he tossed a scroll into the dustbin. Why don't we get some ramen before returning to your mother's house? Ramen, ramen, ramen. Himawari cheered and ran to get her raincoat from the closet. I want a big bowl with extra pork. Oh, I want dumplings with extra meat. At least one of his children liked ramen. Slow down there, my little carnivore. Naruto grabbed his jacket and followed his daughter out of his office. He paused in front of Shizune's desk. I'll be out for a couple of hours. Let me know if anything major comes up. As you wish, Lord Hokage. Enjoy your lunch. She glanced at her laptop. What should I do about your noon meeting with Lord Hiashi? Have him wait in my office. Naruto shrugged. Can't really make him hate me anymore. Serve him some tea and cookies if the old fuck gets cranky. Easier said than done. Shizune shook her head but maintained her smile. Oh, did you see my vacation request? Naruto nodded and called out for Himawari to wait for him. Of course. Approved the full amount. You deserve a good break. As do you. Shikamaru will be back next week. Why don't you take some time off? We're in a bit of a slow period until September's graduation. Perhaps you could leave early today after your meeting to relax. He wanted to avoid retreading this conversation. Perhaps later. We've only just caught up on the budget. Then, seeing the woman about to argue, Naruto flashed a foxy grin. See y'all later, Shizune. Have fun with Hiashi. The walk to Ichiraku took father and daughter through the heart of Konoha's new business district. The rebuilding of Konoha took place over 5 years under the reign of Kakashi, changing the primitive village into a modern city with the latest technology. Electronic screens display the latest products while bright lights ensured the city never slept. The modernization continued under him with a rush of new civilians into the town to support the growing financial sector. Each change in demographics altered the village's landscape, creating districts that catered to the ninja and civilian populations. It was a new age for Konoha, but Naruto felt like something was forever lost. People no longer knew one another on the streets due to the influx of new people. Merchants did not stand outside their shops to attract new customers but gave that job to scantily clad women who pranced around with signs. The effect it had on the younger generation was pronounced, with Boruto more concerned about taking missions to buy the latest video game console instead of training or studying. Even sweet Himawari seemed more interested in the joys of buying things instead of using her imagination. Even Ichiraku changed for the worse. Ayame took over once her father I read and expanded it to a multi-level restaurant with an entire wait staff. She does very little cooking nowadays, preferring to focus on growing the business to other towns and licensing the brand out. The ramen still tasted good but lacked the magic it once had. Was it him or the ramen that changed? Lunch with Himawari ended far too quickly, with Hinata wanting her home before Boruto returned from his daily D ranks. He could have argued that, all day, meant until sunset but decided it best to avoid kicking that hornet's nest. The divorce agreement approved by the National Court granted Hinata the ability to define the definitions, and any attempt to challenge them would end badly for him. The Hyuga's money proved far more potent than his adventures in saving humanity from destruction. After everything he did, the system still worked against him. They arrived at a small house located a stone's throw away from the Hyuga compound. While Hinata technically left the clan upon marriage, she maintained a healthy relationship with her father and sister. He promised Neji to change the Hyuga and succeeded. In an odd twist of fate, it came back to bite him in the ass on multiple occasions. Then again, how much had they changed? Boruto, the apple of his grandfather's eye, was destined to become the eventual heir while carrying all the egoism the clan was infamous for. It was a damn good thing he decided not to restart the Uzumaki clan officially. The power would have gone straight to the boy's head and turned him into a bigger asshole than he already was. Hinata waited for them at the front door with a big smile and open arms, ready to catch the charging Himawari. Naruto remained at the edge of the property, maintaining an emotionless mask to Kansa. The hurt of having to depart from his daughter once more. Once the girl became a ninja, she would be able to visit him as much as she wanted, but that remained years away. He was ready to leave when Hinata approached him. Long gone was the blushing bride that filled his heart with joy on their wedding. In her place was a woman that had become bitter with life, whose fairy tale life shattered when reality came. Naruto. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. The Hokage turned to face the woman who had destroyed so much of his life. What do you want? Hinata glanced back at the house. Someone stood in the window watching them, and Naruto wondered who this mysterious new boyfriend was. Was it someone he knew? Was it a foreigner? He hoped it was. The thought of one of his friends sweeping in to win his wife's heart was almost too much to bear. I am planning on taking Himawari to the beach next week. Would it be alright if Boruto went with us? Boruto will have to ask Konohamaru for the time off first. After that, I will look at his mission reports to see if he qualifies for a break. Naruto knew that she knew the rules. Genin required the permissive of their squad leader to take any time off. The Hokage would approve the request if the Genin performed satisfactorily. They both knew Boruto's performance left much to be desired. He knew he game she was playing and refused to be a part of it. Sometimes bureaucracy can be incredible. Her smile faltered. It has been a while since we've taken a family vacation. We haven't been on a family vacation since you walked out, Naruto snapped before counting to 3 and exhaling. Boruto is a ninja now and will be treated like all the others. He will not get special treatment. It is time for him to grow up. Hinata crossed her arms and sighed. You were robbing him of a childhood. Robbing him of a childhood. I gave him a life I couldn't even dream of when I was his age. Naruto struggled to keep his anger in check. He grew up in a loving household with parents that adored him perhaps a little too much. His clothes were always new, and he did not have to use leftover supplies at the academy. Every birthday was a celebration with gifts and parties. Where is that a bad childhood? It was certainly better than what either of us had. Hinata's eyes narrowed as his tone began to rise. In many ways, she was the same princess everyone treated her as. No, was not a word to use to her. Very well, Lord Hokage. I will break the news to him. He was looking forward to this just as much as Himawari. Wonderful. She had already told him that he had agreed to it. Now, he was doomed to be the bad guy once again. Whatever, Ino told him to walk away from confrontations like these. Her therapy had done wonders for his mental health since the divorce. Some of us have work to do. Do not walk away from me. We are not done with this conversation. Blow it out your ass, bitch. Ino would lecture him about that one, but it felt so good. Upon his return to the Hokage Tower, Naruto found Shizune sitting at her desk with a frown that touched the ground. He gave her a weak smile that did little to improve her mood. He had another Hyuga to deal with. If the Uchiha were as bad as the Hyuga, he could almost understand why the third allowed Itachi to kill all of them. Maybe he would wish for a Hyuga Itachi next birthday to relieve him of a massive headache. Wish me luck. Naruto flashed a smile to Shizune, who returned it with a mock prayer. Then, with a deep breath, he strode into his office and ignored the glare on the way to his desk. Apologies for the delay, Lord Hyuga. My daughter wanted ramen really bad. You were 2 hours later, Lord Hokage. Such tardiness speaks ill of your administration. Hiashi gave him a look that could sour milk. When I arrange a meeting, I expect you to be on time. Naruto leaned back in his chair and fished out a bottle of sake left over from Tsunade's time as Hokage. I have plenty of people requiring my attention. You cannot expect me to drop everything just for you. Now, would you care for a drink? No, I wish to discuss my request for a new compound. As you know, the Hyuga's birth rates have increased since the end of the war. We are running out of space to house all our members. Hiashi pulled out a small scroll and placed it on the desk. With your permission, I would like to move my clan into the old Uchiha compound. Declined. The Uchiha will keep their compound. Naruto poured the sake into a dirty coffee mug. If you want more space, buy some land and build a new one. Why should Konoha pay for it? The Hyuga is the largest clan within the village at the moment. Our bloodline gives Konoha a massive advantage over her enemies. This is merely repaying us for our services. He pushed the scroll forward. I am willing to offer the traitor. Sasuke, Naruto corrected with a pleasant smile that he knew would upset the Hyuga. Go on. I am willing to offer Sasuke a large compensation sum and arrange a marriage between his daughter and my grandson. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Pardon. Boruto is a fine young man with many talents. Sasuke's daughter could not ask for a better husband. The thought of his son marrying the sweetheart that was Satoru Uchiha made Naruto's stomach sick. Hiyashi's mind must have rotted to the point of lunacy if the man thought he would agree to such a thing. Arrogance did make people do stupid things, however. For the sake of my children, I will not tell Sakura what you just offered. Your request is declined. It would be good if you burnt the scroll and never spoke of this again. Dismissed. I am not. 2 members of Naruto's Anbu guard appeared in the room. One Anbu wore a panda mask, while the other wore a turtle mask. Come, Lord Hyuga, allow us to escort you out. Yosh, I can share the secrets of eternal youth with you as well. It begins with a good breakfast and, Hiashi stood up and quick. Kaylee walked to the door before the turtle Anbu could continue his lecture on a balanced breakfast. Thanks, guys. Naruto smiled as Tenten and Lee removed their masks. The strange students of Guy had become some of his closest friends over the years. He could trust no other save Sasuke to guard his life and those important things. Worry not about it, Naruto. Now, as I saying, a good breakfast should contain plenty of carbs. Tenten groaned and rolled her eyes at her teammates. Youth. Lee, we know what Naruto already eats for breakfast. His breakfast is perfectly healthy. TWO eggs and 2 slices of whole wheat bread topped with an avocado spread. Naruto, upon turning 30, decided to take Sakura's advice to heart and watched what he ate. Another aspect of being aflamed with youthfulness is rest. Lee struck another pose, and Tenten smiled for once at his antics. It is good to rest and relax after working so hard. Naruto's smile evaporated. Don't tell me you've been talking to Shizune. Not exactly. Naruto groaned and placed his head on the desk. Look, I'm perfectly fine. Nothing is the matter with me. Lee's grin faded into a concerned smile. But, my friend, the night shift reports that you have not been sleeping for long. Sleep is the most important aspect of health. It allows your body to heal and recover. Yeah, I know. Ino has given me the same speech 100 times. Then, seeing that his 2 friends still stared at him expecting more, he sighed and nodded. I'll leave early today and try to get some more sleep. Happy. Certainly so. To celebrate this, I shall run 200 laps around the village on my hands. Wait, Lee, we're still on duty. Youthfulness is a duty. The dream began like usual, with Hinata on top of him. He gripped her hips, fingers pressing into her pale flesh as waves of pleasure radiated up his body. She stared down with the love of a goddess that understood him like none other. Her moans of ecstasy promised him that she belonged to him in both body and soul. Beads of sweat rolled down his face as her crimson hair tickled him. The woman was no longer Hinata and no longer human. Burning eyes stared down at him from a face vaguely humanoid but mostly bestial. Her muzzle pulled back into a sinister smile that displayed rows of teeth that could only belong to a predator. The sensual moans of his ex-wife turned into lustful growls that demanded all of him. Despite his revulsion, Naruto sunk into her erotic bliss and explored her fur-covered body. She shrieked with joy upon his rediscovery of her breasts. The jolting of her hips increased with gentle caresses of each of the 8 breasts, increasing his pleasure to levels unattainable by mortal women. "Who do you belong to?" She leaned down to lick his face with a tongue hotter than hellfire. "I am yours and only yours." Naruto whimpered as she kissed him, exploring and searing the inside of his mouth with her tongue. She pulled back as the pressure began to build to maddening heights. "I am yours and only yours. I am nothing without you. You give me eternal life. UWHO banishes death and brings the end of all things." The creature's maw clamped down around his throat just as he released inside her. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. The soft smoke of sandalwood incense calmed Naruto's mind, allowing him to recall the dream without the typical self-loathing. He laughed when Ino first suggested aromatherapy but found that sandalwood soothed him enough to talk about the issues freely. Once more, Ino proved to be a master in her field. Was it Hinata or Kushina this time? Ino wrote something down on her notepad. "When was the last time you had one of these dreams?" 3 nights ago." He paused and rubbed the back of his head. "Mom was in that one." Saying such a thing made him feel like a monster. Interesting. The frequency of the dreams with Kushina is increasing. Compared to last month, you've had 16 dreams that featured Hinata and 15 with your mother. I haven't really thought about it. But, of course, he didn't want to think about it. Ino laid her notebook on the table and smiled, reaching for his hand. "It shows progress. Divorce is never easy, but your brain is moving away from Hinata. You're moving on, and that's a wonderful thing." "Sure is. Replacing my ex-wife with my mom in my wet dreams is really great progress." Naruto took another lungful of the smoke in. "Don't be like that, Naruto. I am doing everything I can to help you get to the root of all this." Ino leaned back in her seat and took up the notepad. "These dreams are telling you that something is missing in your life. Let's be totally honest. Your childhood was never a happy one. The lack of parents and the scorn from the villagers left you with some hefty emotional baggage. You've buried it so long that it would get out somehow. But why my mom? Why can't it be Sakura or you?" Ino's professional mask cracked slightly with a massive grin. "I'm almost flattered." It returned with a quick note on her pad. "The presence of your mother is probably a call back to the feelings of loneliness or jealousy when you saw the other children's mother. So I really wouldn't worry about it. And the creature, where is that coming from?" "I don't know." Ino sighed and shook her head. "It is an internalized manifestation of some trauma. I would like to try something different. Since I can't roam around in your mind like a normal patient, I cannot see what this creature exactly looks like. What if you described it to Sai, and he can draw it?" Naruto jumped from his seat. "Hell no. There is absolutely no way in hell that I want Sai to know about my twisted pervy fantasies." "Calm down." Ino's voice hardened into a commanding tone. "Take a deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. Repeat." Seeing him simmer down, she made another note. "Sai won't know what it is about. You will have to describe what it looks like to him. No other detail is necessary. And you won't tell him. Naruto, I am professional. Nothing that we discuss leaves this office." Ino moved closer to him. "This is a safe space to discuss anything. Now, let's get back on topic before I release you back into the world." She hesitated for a moment. "Do you enjoy it when Hinata shows up or when Kushina appears?" Naruto glared. "I am not answering that. You just did." Ino frowned and made another note. "Perhaps you are taking the dream too literally. Instead of Kushina being your mother, perhaps the type of woman Kushina was is what you're fantasizing about." Children often find partners that share some traits with their parents. It is extremely common. For example, Sai and Papa are alike in some funny ways. Both make stupid jokes, and both had a love of art. That still doesn't make me feel better. It's just something for you to think about. Ino glanced at the clock. Time is up. I can schedule you sometime next week if you like. Naruto took in a final breath of scented air before nodding. Yeah, Shikamaru should be back tomorrow, so my schedule is completely open. Excellent. Let's say next Tuesday around 9 in the morning. She filled out a small slip of paper and handed it to him. Focus on one day at a time, Naruto. Find the simple things in life to enjoy. Another mission well done, Team 7. The client will be more than happy. Naruto glanced at the scroll given to him by Konohamaru detailing the cleaning of the Inuzuka kennels. Again, Sarada and M.I. Tsuki performed well beyond the expectations of fresh genin, completing their designated tasks quickly and without complaint. Meanwhile, Boruto's attitude remained sour throughout the assignment. Thank you, Lord Hokage. Konohamaru saluted him with a smile. Is there another mission available for us? Better not involve picking up dog crap. Boruto huffed and stomped his food. It amazed Naruto how a genin could act more like a child than him a worry. A part of him wanted to find a fecal-focused mission just for his wayward son. Naruto skimmed through the mission list on his desk. Nothing that your team is ready for. Looks like you guys have the afternoon to train. Sadara jumped into the air with a laugh. Oh yeah, Konohamaru-sensei, can we work on taijutsu? Oh, what about ninjutsu and taijutsu? How about some lunch first? Konohamaru chuckled at his student's eagerness. Meet me at Ichiraku in half an hour. My treat. Naruto watched as Sarada and Mitsuki left tea. He roomed and cringed as Boruto and Konohamaru remained. He felt what was coming and suddenly wished that someone would assassinate him. Lord Hokage, Hinata and Boruto tell me you've approved him to take some personal time next week. Konohamaru looked down at his smirking student with a frown. Did they now? Naruto retrieved a wooden pipe from the desk drawer. He filled it with a pinch of tobacco and lit it with a match. Hinata mentioned she wanted to take Boruto to the beach. I said that it would need to be approved by you first before I gave the final approval. Boruto's smirk died instantly. Your report does not paint my son's conduct in a positive light. Konohamaru looked down with disappointment directed at his student and himself. He tried his best to instill morals into the boy but found it nearly impossible, thanks to Hinata and the Hyuga. I do not believe he has earned that privilege, sir. Just wait a minute. Boruto's jaw dropped at the betrayal. I completed everything you told me to. And complained the entire way through. Your teammates had twice the amount of work and completed everything before you did. That's your fault for assigning me so little. My fault. Konohamaru groaned and stared at the picture of the third Hokage hanging on the wall. It's my fault for asking you to do your job. I am at my limits with you. What will it take for you to step up and take life seriously? Boruto looked at his father with pleading eyes. Let me go on this trip with Mom, and I'll come back and take my training seriously. I promise. You have made a lot of promises but have yet to keep any of them. Naruto blew out a puff of air. What makes this time any different? It is different. Grandpa is going to start training me once we get back. I'll be the perfect shinobi. Naruto closed his eyes and prepared for the backlash. Try working on being a decent shinobi first. The request for your vacation is denied. Boruto's rage scream threatened to rupture both senior ninjas' eardrums. You always ruin everything. You ruined my family. Calm yourself, Boruto. Konohamaru grabbed the genin's arm. That is enough. It is quite alright. Allow him to throw his temper tantrum in here versus in public. Naruto looked down at the paper on his desk, ignoring the boy's taunts. He will learn how to behave one of these days. And you'll learn not to have pervert dreams about your grandma. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. Naruto repeated the mantra as that familiar anger raged to erupt in a tide of violence against his eldest. Of course, Hinata decided to share that detail with the son that hated his guts. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. What type of freak has dirty thoughts about their own mother? You ruined Mom. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. That is enough. Konohamaru began to drag the boy out of the office. How dare you say such things about your father? Lord Hokage. Lord Hokage. Tenten appeared in the middle of the chaos with her mask office. Her black eyes were wide with shock and her hands trembling. We have a message from one of the border towns. I hate you. Mom hates you. Himawari hates you. Everyone hates you. I hope you die alone. Be quiet, Boruto. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. Naru. To tried to block out the ranting of his son. Report. Sasuke Uchiha is dead. The entire room went silent. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. Naruto stared out at the window of the Yamanaka flower shop. He watched the crowds pass by the shop, with a few people waving to him with massive smiles. As Hokage, he was the silent father in the background, ensuring his children lived comfortably. He protected them just as much as they protected him. Sorry about that. Ino came out of the back room with a dirty apron. Had a last minute order come in for a dozen of roses. I thought it would be better to take care of them instead of letting Sai butcher another order. He's a master with the brush but still can't put together a bouquet to save his life. There is no need to apologize. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. It was the second time this week he had requested an appointment. Despite the hassle it caused, Ino always managed to make time for him. Many people believed his fellow blonde to be a stuck-up uncaring drama queen when in reality, she had a heart of gold. If there was a heaven, Ino would be at the top of the list to get in. It is no trouble. I understand that this is a difficult time for you. Ino gestured to the staircase leading up to her office. Losing someone close to you in such a manner is traumatic. Naruto went to his usual spot on the gray sofa at the center of the room. He found it amusing that Ino took couch time, literally. She fiddled with a book of matches to light the incense sticks that would flood the room with mind-numbing smoke. Once the room was prepared, she sat in her chair and took out her notepad. Let us begin with something you said last time. During the funeral last week, you mentioned feeling guilty for crying so much. Why? Ino never held back from the tough questions. I cried more than Sakura did. Naruto closed his eyes as the smoke slipped into his nostrils, tickling his nose hair and caressing his aching mind. Sasuke was her husband, so why should I be grieving more than she? Trust me when I tell you that Sakura is an emotional wreck at the moment. She hides it well in public but can barely contain it in private. Ino jotted something down on her notepad. Sasuke might have been her husband, but he was your brother in many ways. He was family to both of you. So your grieving does not invalidate Sakura in any way. Have you spoken to Sakura yet? No. Naruto rolled over to face away from Ino. Sasuke's death has created a firestorm. Committing suicide in a church does not create a great image for Konoha's shinobi. The daimyo is demanding a full investigation into what exactly happened. I see. Make sure you do not allow your busy schedule to prevent you from healing. You need Sakura at this moment. Sakura needs you at this moment. Heal together with those you care about. Ino turned the page in her notebook. What of your dreams? I forgot to ask about those last sessions. Can we talk about something else? Ino remained silent and stared at him. Clearly, she wouldn't take no for an answer. No more Hinata. It has been my mother each time since I heard about Sasuke's death. Interesting. In a way, this will force you to move on from Hinata. A mind can focus on only a handful of subjects at once. She paused, noticing his unusual stiffness. Is there more? Yeah, we were fucking on an altar. Naruto forced his eyes shut in a futile attempt to block out the images from his dream. He withered on the couch as blood rushed to his groin. In a church, we were on 2p of the altar next to a broken statue of Amaterasu. Ino's brows narrowed. A church. It seems that Sasuke's death is bleeding into the dreams. It has made sleeping very difficult. I bet it has. Ino placed the notepad on the table and leaned back. Have you considered medication? I can prescribe you sleeping pills that will knock you out pretty well. Sai uses them occasionally. Naruto rolled back over to face Ino. I'm not having issues sleeping. It's the dreams that are keeping me awake. There is nothing I can give you that will stop those. Ino reached for his hand, but he pulled away. The issue is your sleeping. I've asked Tenten about your sleeping habits, and they worry me a lot. Over time, your exhaustion will start to damage your mental health. When was the last time you had a full, uninterrupted night? Before the divorce, Boruto was out of the village visiting a festival with Shikamaru's kid. Naruto smiled as the memories of his old life came back. I left the office early that day to spend some alone time with Hinata. You should have seen the surprised look on her face when I swept her off her feet and carried her into the bedroom. We went at it like rabbits. No dreams that time. Afterward, we went on a date to Ichiraku. Ayame actually cooked us dinner that night as a special treat. We went to bed that night, thinking everything was going back to normal. His smile faded as the following morning came back to him. Hinata wanted to ride me one last time before work. I can still remember the look when I called out my mother's name. It wasn't the first time, but it hurt twice as much after the wonderful day before. Ino remained silent as she wrote down her observations, casually glancing at her patient every so often. Finally, Naruto retreated inwards to brood on the life that should have been. He missed those simple days when the Uzumaki lived under a single roof. Life was hard but manageable, knowing that he always had a family to come back to. Now, only an empty house waited for him in the evening. Why does everyone in my life leave? Naruto could not contain the tears that rolled down his cheek. My parents left me when I was born. Pervy Sage went off and died. Kurama said we were best friends but wanted to go off to be with his own kind. Hinata and my own children abandoned me. Sasuke took his own life. Who's next? You, Shizune, Tenten or Lee? Ino did not respond but allowed him to vent. She placed a box of tissues next to him and lit another incense stick. Have you tried mediation? Sai and I recently joined an awesome mediation group that... A sharp knock at the door interrupted. Honeybun. A panda needs to speak with Lord Hokage. Tell them to come back in an hour. There was a brief pause before a new voice spoke. Lord Hokage, Father Yayoi has arrived. He is waiting for you in your office. Tenten. Naruto dried his face on the shelf of his shirt and smiled at Ino. It was faker than the illusion Tsunade used to hide her age. Sorry for cutting the session quick. Duty calls. He ignored her shouts of protest. When he climbed out her window to take to the rooftops, Shizune waited for him at the doors to his office with a tray of tea and a handful of cookies. He arrived minutes ago, sir. I thought you two could use some refreshments to talk. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. Good thinking. What should I expect? Naruto grabbed a chocolate chip cookie from the tray and nibbled. He skipped his usual breakfast for a cup of coffee mixed with sake at the office. Bookish and modest. He is a veteran of the church and a true man of faith. Are you sure you want to do this? T and I can take care of interviewing him. No, Sasuke was my brother. I need to get down to the bottom of this. Naruto flashed a foxy grin that did little to banish the doubt written on Shizune's face. This is a mission for the Hokage. Has Lee returned with Sasuke's belongings? Not yet, but he should be back at any moment. I'll notify you the moment he returns. She hesitated before continuing. Hinata stopped by while you were visiting Ino. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. What did she need? Tenten delivered the child support payment to her yesterday. She wanted to check in on you. So I told her to come back later. Make sure I have a meeting or something when she shows back up. Hinata was the last person he wanted to be comforted by. Wish me luck. Luck wished. Shizune flashed her own attempt at the foxy grin. It lacked the charm he had but was cute in the way only Shizune could be. He felt lucky to have such a person by his side. Father Yayoi was taller than Naruto expected, even when seated. The aged priest stood when he stepped into the office and bowed deeply. Lord Hokage, it is an honor to meet you. The honor is all mine. Naruto extended his hand to the man, who took it gently. Apologies for dragging you across the country. Please, take a seat and enjoy some tea prepared by my assistant. Shizune entered on cue with the tea and cookies. She poured each man a cup before departing. It is understandable that you wish to speak to me. However, I am afraid I can offer no more insight that I haven't already given to your agent. Agent. Naruto tilted his head and poured a bit of sake into his tea. He had yet to learn of anyone from Konoha that had spoken with the man. Tenten had ICT orders to bring Father Yayoi straight to his office. I have not sent anyone to speak with you. Father Yayoi frowned and shook his head. The young lady visited my church a day after the incident and asked about Sasuke. She wore one of your headbands. Really now? Naruto took out a small notepad and a pencil. What did this young woman look like? I need to make sure she gets paid for her mission. Ah, tall. Very tall. Almost your height, Lord Hokage. A faint hint of pink crossed the man's face. She wore a very revealing outfit that left very little to the imagination. It appeared to be some kimono, but in a style I've never seen before. Hair color, eye color, blonde. She had beautiful white eyes. Did she mention her name? Naruto maintained his warm smile but felt a knot forming in his stomach. A particular clan in Konoha was famous for their white eyes, but he had never heard of any of them having hair that was not black or brown. Hane, I believe. She asked about what happened along with what happened to the body. I told her that the coroner had collected the body and shipped it back to Konoha for burial. I do not mean to get the young lady in trouble, but she was extremely unfriendly. Naruto frowned at the idea of someone posing as one of his ninjas mistreating civilians. That was not the values or image he wanted to show the world. Really now? How so? She grew frustrated when I could not give her the exact location of the body. Then, threatened to report me to, well, you, my lord. I asked that she leave my church if she was going to make such threats. Well, you are not in trouble with me. I shall speak with this kunoichi and reprimand her. Panda. Tenten appeared behind him in a kneeling position. Lord Hokage, please take this and pull the file for anyone named Hane or who matches this description. I might have already sent someone to collect Father Yayoi's testimony and misplaced the report. Now, if you wouldn't mind, let's go over what happened that day. No such person exists in the records or archive room. Tenten sat on Naruto's desk with her mask dangling from her belt. The only Hane to ever have been in our ranks was a woman who died during the Third War. She placed a photograph of a short woman with black hair that looked the opposite of the woman the priest described. As for the eyes, the Hyuga are not the only ones with white eyes. A clan in Iowa has nearly identical looking eyes to the Hyuga minus the Byakugan. To my knowledge, the Ri has never been a Hyuga with blonde hair except for your son. I sent one of my men to the local library to see if anything exists in those archives, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Naruto lifted the photograph up and frowned. Why would someone pose as one of our kunoichis to ask about Sasuke's corpse? She must have been in the area to get there so quick. I mean, she knew about it before we even got word. Maybe she was after his eyes. Tenten grimaced at such a thought. Those things would be worth a king's fortune on the black market. She could simply be a passing missing in who tried to take advantage of the situation. The bigger question is what caused Sasuke to suffer such a breakdown. Lee and I spoke to him not but 2 months ago. He seemed totally normal. An asshole, but normal. No offense. None taken. He would have liked the compliment. Naruto poured another cup of sake. The toxicology report found nothing in his system that would have caused madness. And the sensors found no lingering chakra on him that suggested a genjutsu. Anyways, his Sharingan should have countered any illusion. One would have to be a true master to use a genjutsu on an Uchiha. Kurenai, widely considered the greatest genjutsu user in Konoha history, could not pull off such a feat against Itachi. She paused and rubbed the back of her head. Permission to speak freely. Like you need to ask. Perhaps the most obvious solution is the correct solution. Sasuke suffered a lot of trauma in his lifetime. Who knows what sort of mental problems were lingering in his subconscious. Maybe he just went crazy. Naruto hated to admit it, but that was a real possibility that even Ino hinted at in past conversations. You very well could be right. He looked out the window towards the setting sun. Lee should have been back by now. The village is only a day and a half away, and he probably sprinted the entire way there. I don't like that the police didn't send Sasuke's stuff back with the body. They could have messed with critical evidence. Nothing we can do about it now. Let's hope Lee gets back soon. Naruto sighed and shook his head. If he is not back by morning, send a team out to look for him. Wallop him if it turns out he decided to crawl back to Konoha or something. Gladly. Tenten hopped off his desk and yawned. Mind if I head home? My replacement has arrived. She waved at the cleverly hidden man in a flamingo mask. Dismissed. I'm about to grab something to eat. Naruto walked with Tenten out of the Hokage tower. He frowned upon noticing Hinata waiting on a bench across the street. Just my luck. Tenten cracked her knuckles. Want me to scare her off? I got this. Have a good night. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. Luckily for his ex-wife, he was too tired to be angry. The extra cups of sake helped. He sat next to her and crossed his arms. Evening. What do you need? Hinata looked down and poked her fingers together. It was an odd tick whenever she grew nervous. He always found it cute. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm alive. Naruto shrugged. Been busy with stuff, ya know. Sorry for skipping my day with Himawari. I understand. You're grieving and need time alone. She rested her hands in her lap. I am sorry for what happened last week with Boruto. I was wrong to tell him you would have approved his time off. Pardon. Hinata's head tilted like that of a confused hound. In my office, He brought up my dreams when he was throwing his tantrum. He waited for a moment before continuing. I never told him about those. Hinata's eyes widened at the implications. I would never tell him details about those. I made a promise to never speak to anyone about what happened. Seeing the doubt in his eyes, she grabbed his hands. Naruto-kun, I did not tell him about what happened. The veins around her eyes began to bulge as she stood up. Leave this to me. I will find out who told him that, even if I must beat it out of him. Calm down. Naruto pulled her back onto the bench. Brat probably overheard one of our fights and was saving it for the right moment. He needs to be punished. He had no right throwing that in your face. Naruto could not help but chuckle. We both know you aren't the disciplinary sort. He'll find a way to soothe your rage with a pitiful speech about how much you mean to him. He relaxed his hold on her when she did not try to stand back up. You were always too afraid of becoming like your father. Yes. Hinata closed her eyes and rested her head against his shoulder. His craving for physical intimacy allowed the gesture without protest. I made a mistake with him. We both did, he admitted. I might have been Hokage, but I should have taken my duties as a father more importantly. Old man T. Heard raised 4 children while being Hokage. I could have done the same. They sat together as the day's warmth turned into the night's chill. So, you have a boyfriend. A soft chuckle escaped Hinata's lips. Your daughter is as dense as you were. Kiba. Kiba got into a fight with his mother the other week, so I allowed him to spend some time at my place. Himawari struggled to understand the difference between a boyfriend and a boyfriend. Naruto smiled at his daughter's blockhead. She was truly his child. You're allowed to date. Don't hold back due to me. If I was going to date again, Kiba is at the bottom of my list. His living habits are atrocious. The fact that he is a 30-year-old man still living with his mother does not help. Hinata shook her head. I do not think I will ever date again. Because of me, yes. They remained seated for a little longer in silence. Then, finally, Hinata broke away from him. I better get me before Himawari decides to cook dinner herself. Both parents shuddered at the memory of the last time their daughter tried to make something in the kitchen. The odor of burnt cheese still could be smelt in the kitchen at times. You are not alone, Naruto. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'll keep it in mind. He wanted to end this conversation now. His Hinata quota had reached its limit for the week. Say, does the name Hane ring a bell to you? No. I don't know anyone by that name. She looked down and pushed her fingers together. Why? Ino mentioned someone named Hane back from our academy days. Naruto smiled and waved. Have a good night, Hinata. He watched as she turned the corner before gesturing for his Anbu. Keep an eye on her. Report to me immediately if she goes to the Hyuga compound or receives visitors from her clan. Understand, Lord Hokage. Should I inform Captain Panda of my assignment? She will not replace me until morning. Don't worry about me. Naruto waved the man off. I'm the strongest ninja in his own village. The risk to me is practically zero. As you say, Lord Hokage. Flamingo disappeared in a rush of leaves. Alone and starting to feel the first twinge of hunger, he decided that a quick stop by Ichiraku would improve his mood. The food lacked the same magic from his childhood, but ramen was still ramen at the end of the day. He never had a bad bowl of the divine noodles and wouldn't until the world was coming to an end. His own opinions on Ichiraku were not shared by the rest of Konoha. A massive line had formed outside the restaurant that went around the corner. While he knew the place was popular due to him, this was unlike anything he had seen. He took his place at the back of the line and glanced at his watch. This was going to take a while. Lord Hokage, Shizune came running up to him with a big grin on her face. No longer the wallflower he knew at work. She was dressed in a beautiful blue dress with makeup that highlighted her best features, including a smile that radiated a love of life. "What are you waiting in line for?" "Because I'm hungry." She reached out and grabbed his hand. "Come on, silly. The Hokage does not wait in line. Kurenai made reservations the other day. I'm sure Ayame will let you jump ahead." Naruto cursed for foe. Getting that Shizune had started to date Kurenai shortly before his divorce. The two seemed like an unlikely couple but made each other happy. He hoped to officiate their wedding in the future. "I do not want to interrupt your date." "Nonsense. You're practically family. Plus, Kurenai enjoys talking to you." How the former genjutsu mistress grew to like him after the divorce remained a mystery. Before he could resist, Shizune dragged him down the street, laughing all the way. She entered the restaurant through the reservation doors. "We have one more joining us, Nai." Kurenai, dressed in a simple red dress, turned around and gave him a soft smile. The woman always looked tired but seemed more energetic whenever Shizune was around. "Ah, Lord Naruto. It is a pleasure. Apologies for crashing your date." Naruto rubbed the back of his head. "You know how she gets whenever her mind is made up." "That I do. You are always welcomed company." She turned to the head waiter. "Add one more chair to our table." "But ma'am, I will handle this party." Ayame came out of the back room with a giant smile on her face. She no longer wore the outfit of a waitress but the suit of a CEO in charge of one of the largest restaurant chains in the Elemental Nations. "It has been a while since I last served my favorite customer. Are you here for our new bowl?" Naruto grinned at seeing his old friend. Ayame and her father practically raised him in the days before he became a ninja. He wouldn't be the man he was without them. Any ramen made by her hand was destined to be great. "New bowl." The three women stared at him with shocked expressions. "You don't know about the new flavor." Ayame shook her head in disbelief. "And to think that you call yourself the king of ramen." To celebrate Ichiraku's 200th store, her father created a brand new flavor of ramen. It is creating waves in the culinary world. People are lining up for hours to try it. Shizune smiled at Kurenai. "It came out a few days ago. I'm surprised she was able to get us reservations so easily." "Oh, I have my ways." "Well, I am looking forward to trying it." Suddenly more excited than he had been in years, Naruto raised his fist in the air. "I'll prepare your bowls myself," Ayame declared, taking off her jacket in favor of an apron. "Take them to the VIP section upstairs." "Fancy." Shizune giggled as the waiter laid them up the stairs to the area reserved for important people. Naruto had visited the upper level once or twice since becoming Hokage but preferred the more laid-back atmosphere of the ground floor. "I heard Ayame spent over a small fortune remodeling the VIP section. She brought in some foreign designers to craft a one-of-a-kind room." A small fortune was an understatement. Naruto's eyes widened at the lavishly designed room where the wealthy elites visiting Konoha dinned. Each table, made of wood imported from the islands far to the south, sat low to the ground and was surrounded by silk pillows instead of chairs. Exotic lanterns hung from the ceilings and served as the only light source for the room, creating long shadows that danced as the flames flickered. Sweet smoke poured out from burning incense burners designed to look like mythical beasts. Naruto recognized the scent as sandalwood, and his mind relaxed instantly. The grand feature of the entire room was the fountain at the center. Made of solid gold with ebony marble trim, it featured 9 levels of cooling waters that flowed from the top. Statues of dancers pranced on each level save the top, which was reserved for the magnificent goddess. Naruto approached the fountain and examined the she that overlooked the entire restaurant. She inspired feelings of terror and arousal as if she were the living embodiment of humanity's darkest carnal sins. He was not the only one who felt disturbed by her. Each dancer looked upon their goddess with horror and desire as their bodies twisted into bone-breaking shapes. He joined the women at the table to avoid looking at the blasphemy of design. All Pair your first 3 bowls right after one. Fetch you some sake if that is all right with all of you. Kurenai chuckled and shook her head. One will be more than enough for me. Nonsense. Ayame gestured to one of the nearby tables. The man and woman, both dressed in the most expansive brands, shuffled bits of red meat into their mouths using their fingers. Crimson droplets rolled down their faces. They're on their 6th bowl already. A few people have already beaten your record, Naruto. Guess I got my work cut out for me. Something about the 2 dinners suddenly made Naruto lose his appetite. Still, it was too late to head home without offending Shizune or Ayame. Prepare 2 bowls for me. I'm extra hungry. I told you that you shouldn't have skipped lunch. Shizune gave him a stern look like a scolding sister. It will take me a few minutes to get everything ready. Enjoy, and let me or any of the waiters know if you need anything. Ayame bowed and disappeared into the kitchens. This place looks amazing. Kurenai smiled and rested her hand on Shizune's. Reminds me of the places Pervy Sage took me during my training trip. The former two. Ad Sage enjoyed stopping at exotic brothels in the land of fire port cities. Apparently, the foreign women could do stuff the lovely girls of the nations wouldn't even dream of. He believed that the old pervert just paid them more. Naruto drowned out the mundane conversation of the 2 women in favor of examining the murals painted on the world. Each one depicted a scene straight from mythology, such as the first sermon of the Sage of 6 Paths or Amaterasu's ascent into the heavens upon her mortal death. His eyes stopped to examine the old sage. The man looked much like how Naruto remembered him, with the Rinnegan represented by a pair of diamonds. However, it was the first time he had ever seen the sage represented in such details anywhere in the world. 2 sons stood behind him, representing the Senju and Uchiha clans. A third figure, partly hidden by a bush, observed the scene from afar. His eyes narrowed to get a better look at the figure. It appeared humanoid, in shape but with the features of an animal. The creature, obviously female due to the 8 small breasts that ran down to her abdomen, lacked the face of a human but grinned with the extended mew. Zizel of some type of canine with deep red fur. 2 ruby eyes glistened in the dim lights of the lanterns. The monster had a single bushy tail with a snow-white tip to complete the look. Beads of sweat rolled down his neck as the few contents of his stomach tried to come up. He recognized the beast in the mural. It matched every detail of the monster that took the shape of his mother down to even the finer detail. Like the curved claws meant for the sundering of flesh. Here is your sake. Ayame came with 2 bottles and 3 cups. Just came in from the land of wind. They make some amazing sake. Tsunade always orders her stash from there. Shizune poured the 3 cups. Are you okay, Naruto? Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. Totally. Just really looking forward to this ramen. Naruto tried to force a smile on his face to not ruin the experience for Shizune or Kurenai. The effort paid off as the 2 women returned to their conversation. However, he remained fixated on the creature on the wall until Ayame returned with the bowls of ramen. She placed his down first and smiled. Give me your verdict, Ramen King. Naruto pushed the monster from his mind and took up his chopsticks. The food smelled good, with the aroma of spiced chunks of meat mixing well with the sweet red chili broth. He picked up a long, black noddle and brought tea to his lips as the women looked on with excitement. Immediately, every taste bud in his body screamed out in revulsion. The sweet coppery broth mixed with the pungent noodle that tasted like rotting meat. He wanted to spit it out yet forced it down to keep from insulting Ayame. The former waitress cheered as he returned for a piece of meat. It tasted slightly better but was unlike any pork he had ever eaten. Shizune and Kurenai started on their bowls, eating with a ravenous speed that lacked his hesitation. He finished the first bowl and excused himself to the restroom. Betwi, seeing the creature that stalked his nightmares to the vile ramen, he leaned over the toilet of the first stall and vomited. The world around him spun as he stumbled out of the bathroom. He RNED to the table and nearly cried upon seeing a second bowl waiting for him. Shizune, face stained red with the juices, managed to look up at him. Are you okay, Lord Hokage? No, he did not feel okay. And he knew he did not look okay. I'm fine, just a little under the weather from everything. Hate to bail on you too, but I need to rest. His eyes fell upon the scene of the sage's sermon. The creature was gone from her hiding spot. He looked at the other murals to find where they had gone to. A fresh wave of vomit threatened to spill out as he saw that the scene of a martyr ASU ascending to heaven had been changed. The Lady of Light lay on the ground as a broken mess with her eyes plucked out. The creature stood triumphantly above her with both claws raised to the sky. He ignored the questions of concern from Shizune and Kurenai on his way to the exit. Neon lights and the chattering of the crowd stabbed at Naruto's senses. He covered his ears and closed his eyes to block out the storm of humanity, pushing through the people eagerly awaiting their chance to taste the new ramen. Finally, someone sent him to the ground with a scream of frustration. He crawled forward to escape as a crowd began to form around him. What the hell is wrong with him? Watch where you're going, punk. Do you know who I am? Stay back. He looks sick. Is that the Hokage? Naruto lurched forward just as another wave of vomit erupted. He whimpered and collapsed onto the ground. His hands reached out to the crowd in a plea for help, but they moved back. Help me. None came forward. Pain washed over his body when more vomit came. He rolled over onto his back to stare up at the night sky. Only a few stars managed to slip past the light palladio, and that blocked the celestial realm above. Then, consciousness started to fail him, and darkness crept into his vision. Salvation came in the form of soft hands and softer words. Finally, someone lifted him into a warm embrace. I just got back and already must save you. Good thing I like you a lot. He tried to stare at the face of his savior but saw only darkness. Are you a goddess? I am hatred incarnate. Naruto smiled as the last shreds of consciousness slipped into the void. Kurama. Spring welcomed him with streams of golden light poured through the blossoming sakura trees onto his face free of filth. Birds soared in a blue sky free of the pollution that dominated Konoha, and for the first time in a long time, Naruto thought clearly. A forgotten joy erupted and his soul as the optimistic boy that believed in the world returned. He stretched out limbs that were free from the usual aches that came with the sanitary life of a Hokage. Grass softer than silk tickled his naked form. Naruto climbed to his feet and stared out over the rolling green hills that raced under a golden sun towards a sapphire sea. Unable to contain his excitement, he ran and sang until tiredness forced him down by a cool stream shaded by willows. He dipped his feet into the water and leaned back to stare at the majestic clouds climbing. The coming of another came with the soft crunching of fallen leaves. He sat up upon his elbows and froze as the robed form of Kushina knelt on the other side of the creek. Do not fear me, the voice did not belong to that of his mother despite coming from her lips. I am not here to hurt you. Am I dead? Death does not exist here. This is a land of eternal spring. The woman, for he knew her not to be Kushina's, led at him and stepped over the creek to sit next to him. Do you know who I am? We have met before. Naruto flinched as she placed her hand on his arm. In my dreams. The woman nodded and smiled. That we have. You are not my mother. Why do you wear her shape? For my ability to take the form of humanity is rather limited. There are only a few humans I know well enough to walk as. The woman leaned forward and plucked a dandelion from the grass. Why do you wish to be Hokage? Those you swore to protect only looked down upon you in your time of need. Naruto flinked head at the memory of the crowd gathered around him and how they ignored his pleas for help. He shook his head. Who are you? You did not answer my question. She smirked at him and rubbed the dandelion on his arm to leave behind a yellow mark. I already told you who I am. You already said my name. His eyes widened in a competition of joy and anger. Kurama, the one and only. Kurama frowned for a moment. Thought, I much prefer Ama. It is closer to the name I awoke to. Naruto's world shattered as he stared at the kitsune. Every night of suffering came from the being he wanted to return to his life. He felt rage and the desire to strike her build in every fiber of his being. She ruined his life and took everything away. Sensing his anger, the woman rested a hand on his forehead. Nothing we did was against your will. The simple statement took the winds from his sail. She was right. While the dreams started with Hinata or Kushina upon him, he could have pushed them off. The words spoken from his mouth belonged to him. I reached out, and you answered. Why? Thick tears rolled down his face as Ama stood up. He tried to be angry but found only confusion and frustration. Why would you make me dream such things? When your marriage to Hinata was happy, why did you wish to lay with her? Amma disappeared into the bushes on the far side of the bank. I felt you suffering and came to soothe you like I always have. You ruined my marriage. The anger surfaced once more but fizzled upon Amma's laughter. The statement was ridiculous, and they both knew that his marriage to Hinata was coming to an end long before the dreams began. I ruined my marriage. Neither of you ruined the marriage, Amma corrected with a gently chiding tone. At the end of the day, you and Hinata wanted different things in life. Why must you put the blame on anyone? She did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. Naruto stared at the stream with tears still flowing down his face. Is this all a dream? An attempt by my subconscious to make me feel better? Someone has been talking to Ino a little too much lately. Amma chuckled. This is my dream. This is your future. My future. Naruto wandered into the nearby forest in search of the kitsune. Why is my future your dream? I remember your first heartbeat. I remember your first thought. I remember your first breath. I remember your first words. I am the end of all things. We are the new beginning. Naruto laid his head on the desk and closed his eyes. The remnants of his migraine faded thanks to large amounts of coffee. However, his ass-chewing courtesy of his Anbu and Shizune made him wish for the pain to return. How long had it been since anyone cared enough to lecture in such a manner? Hinata never criticized him until the final days of her marriage. He and Iruka did not really speak much since the divorce. His former teacher expressing extreme disappointment in the handling of Boruto. Honestly, Naruto, drunk. It was the absolute worst time to send Flamingo away. Tenten slammed her palms onto his desk. Are you even listening to me? You were found in an alleyway by the police. Thank the gods that an assassin didn't discover you. According to Tenten and the others, the police brought him back home and called for the Anbu along with a medic. He awoke early in the morning to a furious Tenten that showed him the mercy of allowing him to recover before beginning the verbal beating. Shizune, who had left Ichiraku shortly after he did, spent all night running around the business district looking for him before an officer informed her that he was all right. Luckily, Lee had yet to return and could not explain how unyouthful his actions were. Kurama was with me. She wouldn't let anyone near me that meant harm. Tenten's glare softened a degree. She knew how much he missed his former tenant. The disappearance of Kurama changed Naruto, removing much of the goofy boy in favor of a more somber man. Most of his friends marked that as the turning point in his life when the optimism faded. He couldn't argue that his life got a lot less bright without the fox. The Nine Tails is not in the village. We would have detected him the second that he crossed the barrier. You were running a fever last night and hallucinated. None of the tailed beasts had been seen in the elemental nations in over a decade, with even the eight-tailed disappearing shortly after Killer Bee's accident. It hurt Naruto to lose Kurama, who had just become one of his best friends, but he knew the fox craved the freedom to explore the world without fear of being contained again. So it was best he did not bring up his latest dream. You're probably right. Naruto sighed and sipped his coffee. Any word from Lee? Tenten took a seat in one of the chairs and crossed her arms. None. I sent 3 squads out this morning to look for him. You're not the only one trying to make me go gray early. You would look cute with gray buns. Naruto offered a weak smile that earned him a sharp glare. He forgot that his boyish charms never worked on Tenten. What about Hane? Hinata seemed nervous last night when I mentioned the name. Don't think changing the topic will save your behind. Mr. Hokage. Tenten puffed her cheeks out. She removed a small scroll from her pocket and unsealed it on the table to reveal a history book. My men did find something. Naruto flipped through the book. It looked dry and extremely outdated, with Hiruzen listed as the current Hokage. Don't tell me reading this is my punishment. As fun as that would be, I took the liberty of marking the relevant passages. Turn to page 533. Naruto did as instructed and groaned at the lack of pictures. It was a long, tedious passage about history of the Senju clan's relationship with the Uzumaki. Tenten reached across the table and pointed at a paragraph. Read here to the bottom. Blah, blah, blah. Whirlpools. Blah, blah, blah. Seals. People always assumed that he was curious about his mother's clan. In reality, He could care less about it and found most of the records about them full of obvious embellishments. His eyes stopped upon seeing the name, Hane Hyuga. According to the book, Hane resulted from an illicit love affair between a Hyuga male and an outsider that caused her to have blonde hair. She managed to rise through the ranks of the Hyuga thanks to her shrewd business sense and cunning diplomatic abilities that earned the clan much wealth. Her name, however, would be stricken from records after she sold the secrets of the Land of Whirlpools, defense seal array to an enemy nation and tried to murder the wife of the first Hokage. By the time of her execution, she was little more than a raving lunatic consumed with insanity. No wonder Hinata seemed nervous. Naruto scratched his cheek. Still does not explain Our Lady that talked to Father Yayoi. True, but that is not all there is to Hane. What if I told you that she was not executed? Tenten smiled as Naruto raised an eyebrow. She placed a scroll on the desk. This is from the mission archive room in the library. All mission reports automatically become public records unless classified. Turns out that the third Hokage sent a group of hunter nin out in search of a blonde woman with white eyes spotted in the land of grass. Pretty interesting. Naruto glanced at the mission scroll. The assignment ended in failure, with one of the shinobi reported dead and the remaining 3 needing medical care upon arrival to the village. Old man Sarutobi's signature was undeniable. Odd, but that does not mean anything. Even if she didn't have her head chopped off, she would have been dead by now. You're not wrong. Tenten sat down and frowned. There is a good chance that this woman is a nobody ninja who wanted to make a quick buck by plucking Sasuke's eyes out. However, I do find the coincidences odd. Shizune entered the office with a tray of tea and a red carry-out box. She smiled at Tenten and glared at Naruto. I figured you would like a cup of tea. Don't you even think about putting sake in it this time. I have given Tenten permission to smack you silly if so much as a drop is added. What you're telling me is to drink my sake straight. Naruto smiled. D as the women in the room glared at him. He held up his hand. I promise not to drink any sake. Excellent. Kurenai and I decided to come in before you got here and cleared out your bottles. You should have seen Lady Tsunade's face when we dropped the box off. Oh, come on. Why did you have to give it to Granny? She drinks more than I do. Last time I checked, Lady Tsunade isn't Hokage. Shizune smiled sweetly and put the takeout container on the desk. I packed your second bowl up for you last night. Figured you would want it for breakfast. Naruto dipped his head in thanks. Smart thinking. I am starving. He waited until Shizune left the room before dumping the entire thing into the waste bin. Hey, now, Tenten looked at the discarded ramen with a massive frown. Isn't that the new flavor? I've been wanting to try that since it came out. Why throw it away? Don't. Naruto opened his laptop to begin the day's work. Stuff is fucking disgusting. Tenten placed her panda mask on. Given your devotion, I'll take your word for it. She was about to take a position in her usual spot when Shizune rushed into the office. Lee is in the hospital. A coma. Yeah, his wounds are pretty bad. Naruto closed his eyes and allowed the sandalwood smoke to ease his troubled mind. He focused on the sound of Ino's pencil moving across her notepad. With Sakura out of commission right now, he'll be out of service for the foreseeable future. I feel horrible about it. Ino lowered her pad and shook her head. Lee is a shinobi. Missions are always filled with risks. I made the decision to send him alone. Naruto's fingers curled into fists that slammed against the sides of the couch. His welfare is my responsibility, and I failed him. How can I be Hokage if I let one of my best friends get so fucked up? Remember your mantra. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. This is how our world works, Naruto. Ino placed her pad on the table. People go on missions and sometimes don't come back. Remember Asuma-sensei and Jiraiya. You had no way of knowing that he would get attacked. She hesitated. Did he retrieve Sasuke's belongings? Who gives a fuck about that? Naruto flinched as he saw a look of hurt pass over Ino's face. Apologies. I shouldn't have yelled. It's okay. You're dealing with a lot at the moment. Still doesn't excuse my actions. Naruto sighed and rubbed his face. No, they did not find anything belonging to Sasuke. Someone looted and then dumped him in a ditch. Probably thought he was already dead. Once we find whoever did this, I will rip them limb from limb. Mantra. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. Naruto. Ino smiled and reached for his hand. I want to try a new type of therapy. Remember last time I mentioned how Sai and I joined a mediation group? They've really helped Sai with some of his trauma from his root days. It was a fresh start for him. I appreciate the offer, but I've had my fill of mediation during my sage training. This isn't like that, knucklehead. Ino walked to her desk to retrieve a colorful pamphlet labeled, Church of the Red Queen. Take a look. Religion. Naruto stared at Ino with a dry look. I don't really do that kind of stuff. No offense. Ino chuckled and shook her head. It's more of a way of life. They are a great group that recently built a new church right here in Konoha. Looks fancy. The building on the pamphlet looked like a stone cathedral from the western lands, complete with crimson stained glass windows depicting people dancing. The following pages showed happy families together in worship and meditation, along with holy passages, declaring the coming of a new goddess that will save all humanity. It all seemed like fairly standard evangelical stuff to attract people in with hopes of a better life. During his travels, he saw plenty of little groups try to start the next big religion. A small ramen bowl logo on the bottom of the last page gave him pause. Ichiraku is a sponsor. Sure is. Ayame converted some years ago and funded the construction of the new church here near the Senju Park. I heard a rumor that she donates most of the wealth from Ichiraku to the mother church in the capital. Her faith is really inspiring. She should have stuck to cooking ramen. Naruto frowned and tossed the pamphlet on the table. I'll pass, but thanks for the invitation. Keep it in mind. Ino returned the pamphlet to her desk and looked at the clock. Time's up. Next week. Yeah. That sounds good. I'll have Shizune make the arrangements. Naruto exited the office to begin the long walk back to the Hokage Tower. While he could have taken to the rooftops, he enjoyed the time to think. His thoughts, however, came to a sudden halt as someone slapped his back. Heya, boss. Konohamaru placed an arm around his shoulder in a brotherly hug. Want to grab some food? I wouldn't mind some ramen. Let's grab some barbecue. I've been craving some grilled meat lately, ya know. Naruto looked around for Team 7. Where are the kids? Off. Sarada and Boruto are helping set up a festival for tonight. Poor girl has been through a lot, so I didn't protest her request too much. He smiled a bit and rubbed his head. Your son has stepped up and been a good shoulder for her to cry on. That was the first good news he had received in a long time. The fact that it was Boruto, of all people, almost gave him a heart attack. If his son was preparing to date, he would need to give the talk, or make Hinata do it. Yeah, that sounded much better. Good. Maybe he is finally growing up. What sort of festival? Don't know. Those things aren't my type of thing. How's work going? Ready to give me the hat? Almost. Naruto chuckled and punched his student. If things don't slow down, I might go into early retirement. Church of the Red Queen, huh? Never pictured Ino for the religious type. Tenten leaned against the desk with her arms crossed. I'm not Sue. RPRISED. One of those wacky groups showed up. Post-war saw a lot of new religious movements across all the major nations. Shizune sipped her tea with a frown. This is a bit different. Kurenai and I attended one of their meetings before they built that new church. It started off normal, but we left once they broke out the guitar. Kurenai is a bit of a traditionalist regarding that type of stuff. The fact that Kurenai is religious still amazes me. Naruto took another bite of his sandwich. Do we have any intel on them? I don't like a group setting up shop in the village without us knowing anything about them. Tenten reached across the desk to take Naruto's sandwich. The church was founded, like I said, in the years right after the war. No one can point to a direct founder. Still, it is believed that it was a union of numerous little groups spread throughout the major nations. Its main cathedral is in Koga. Odd that they moved to the Land of Fire. Shizune placed her cup on the desk and grabbed her laptop. That's probably because of Ayame. She's been giving them a lot of the money she's made from Ichiraku. Naruto glared at his bodyguard, who was busy eating his sandwich. She should have stuck to making ramen instead of becoming a choir girl. Shizune shook her head. How could you, of all people, not like that ramen? I understand that Kurenai didn't like it because she's picky. Kurenai didn't like it. No, she only finished half of her bowl. I would love to give my insight, but someone in this office wouldn't even let me try it. Tenten smiled at Naruto and returned the sandwich. Moving on from that hell bowl, what other info do we know about this group? They're holding a multi-day festival starting tonight. Shizune turned her laptop so the others could see it. Games, prizes, and free ramen. Festival. Naruto frowned as the pieces of the puzzle came together. Boruto. What? Konohamaru mentioned that Boruto and Sarada were helping set up a festival. Something tells me that boy has a new group of friends. Tenten scanned the website. I could make him have an accident, sir. There are a lot of tall buildings around. Don't tempt me. Naruto groaned and shook his head. What do you two think? Should we be concerned? Shizune looked through the website with an increasingly growing frown. They seem a bit apocalyptic. Apparently, they believe that the world is entering into the final dark days before the coming of their new goddess. Therefore, Hey encourage members to hand over vast wealth to spread the good news of the Red Queen. There we go. Tenten clapped with a giggle. Total cult. Someone is making a lot of money from this. If they got a Yame to give over a bunch of stuff, the main folks are swimming in cash. She glanced at Naruto. Want to start a cult with me? Fine by me. You get the women, and I keep the dough. Tenten poked Shizune. Want to join our cult? I'll pass on joining Naruto's harem. Shizune shook her head. I don't think someone is using this to buy yachts. Instead, these folks build homeless shelters around the nations and fund a lot of charity work. Okay, new plan. Naruto, we'll have your harem build a bunch of homes using the cheapest materials possible. Tenten rolled her eyes and looked at the website. Everyone says they do charity work to look good. Did you know the Hyuga operates 3 food banks across the land of fire? True story. Neji had to go work at one for a few weeks when we were kids. Of course, they made the branch house run them. Naruto sighed and leaned back into his chair with a frown. No info on their leadership. Creepy end of days theology. Possibly good guys trying to do the right thing. What's your orders, sir? I have no issue with a good old-fashioned church burning. Tenten spun a kunai around her finger. A sharp knock on the office door startled them. Enter. Good afternoon, Lord Hokage. What a wonderful day to be alive. Naruto, Tenten, and Shizune gasped as Shikamaru strolled into the office with the most energetic smile that would have made younger Naruto cringe. He stopped in front of the desk and saluted Naruto with patriotic fury before kissing each woman on the cheek. I am so happy to see you again. My brother and sisters. Our departure made my heart ache, but we are together again. Shizune quickly went to stand behind Naruto. Hello, Shikamaru. I am glad you're back from your vacation. I am glad to be back, Sister Shizune. Apologies, Lord Hokage, for requesting a few more days. Shikamaru hung his head like a child caught stealing a cookie from the jar. My family and I were so caught up in our retreat that we wanted to spend a few more days. Retreat. Tenten glanced at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. I thought Tamari booked you lot a cabin or something. We were in a cabin with her mediation group. Shikamaru sighed happily. She is a blessing in my life. How lucky I am to have such a woman in my life. Tenten quickly hurried behind Naruto. That's really good, Shikamaru. You seem pretty different. Take a seat, buddy. Let's light one up, and you can tell me all about this. Naruto smiled and pulled a pack of cigarettes from his drawer. Shikamaru gasped and took a step back. The offer is tempting, Lord Hokage. I do not smoke and only allow clean air into my lungs. Our bodies are a gift that we must cherish. I see. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. So, tell me about this mediation group. What did they do to you? Probably a lobotomy. Tenten leaned in towards Naruto to whisper. What the hell is wrong with him? I don't sense a genjutsu. Did to me. Shikamaru smiled with the brilliance of 1,000 suns. They opened my eyes to the sinful life I was walking. Sloth is a sin that can sink us into the mud of despair and wrong action. How long have I held myself back from what I could be? My talents were being wasted due to my constant desire to be lazy, robbing my friends and family of the real me. I feel the hope of a new day for the first time in my life. Fascinating. I am glad to see you're happy. Naruto looked at the 2 women behind him with concern. What was this mediation group called? Ah, are you interested? I keep a few pamphlets on me now to spread the good news. Shikamaru placed 3 of the same pamphlets that Naruto remembered from Ino's office. The Church of the Red Goddess changed my life. It can change yours if you open your hearts. Naruto smiled and nodded. That's nice, Shikamaru. We're about done for the day, so take the rest of the day off. I heard there is a festival tonight being hosted by your church. Indeed, I encourage you to come, Lord Hokage. Tamari and I are bringing snacks for the chill. Dren and will be singing a few songs together. Right, I'll keep that in mind. Have fun. Naruto watched as Shikamaru left the office. Total cult. Agreed. Yup. Tenten returned to her spot. We have to check this group out. Shikamaru is, technically, the second highest ranking member in this village. It is worrying to undergo such a change quickly, even if it appears good on the surface. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed, feeling the start of a headache. Between Ino, Boruto, and now Shikamaru, the newest addition to Konoha, has seeped into everything without warning or notice. The fact that 2 of the most influential people in the village, Ayame, by virtue of her wealth and Shikamaru due to his position, were under the church's sway could either be a coincidence or an organized effort to gain power. As Hokage, it was his duty to protect the village from threats external and internal. Tenten, I want you to meet with Father Yayoi before he leaves. Ask him everything he knows about this new church. I am sure those who follow Amaterasu will have some insight into their new rival. Shizune, search the archives and library for anything remotely connected to our new friends. Consider this an S-rank mission, so keep this on the down low. What are you going to do, Lord Hokage? Naruto grabbed his cape and stretched. I'm going home take a nap since I have a festival tonight. Checkmate. This game is stupid. Objectively, incorrect. Since you are incapable of seeing an obvious move, I declare you to be the stupid one. Weren't you the one who got her head stuck in a peanut butter jar once and needed my help? Naruto remembered coming home a few weeks after the war ended to find the small fox demon sitting on his couch with the jar of peanut butter firmly engulfed around her head. It took a kunai and cooking spray to get it off, along with a stream of curses from the fox about the evils of humanity. Ma bristled at the memory and turned away with a huff. No such event took place. It must be a figment of your imagination. She paused. Did they still make that flavor with the honey mixed in? That they do. Naruto rolled his eyes and leaned against the oak tree with a smile. Himawari enjoys it a lot. Whenever I make her lunch, she always demands it. Ah, it seems the daughter has better taste buds than her father. My taste buds are very refined. Your favorite food is instant ramen. And you're a scary fox monster that likes to cosplay as other people. Touché. Amma plucked a flower and looked at it. I wear these forms to soothe you. If you wish, I can take my other form. Naruto shook his head and sighed. I just thought you were a just fox. Amma shrugged, pulling the yellow petals and letting them drift away in the wind. It is one of my many forms. I am a formless being that can take certain shapes. The fox is a creature that I have developed a special connection with. Beyond my scary fox monster form, I have others but chose not to reveal those to you. Oh, afraid I'll make fun of you. The opposite, actually. Amma rolled her eyes and chuckled. You would be blinded by it and unable to understand. That, and it would probably burn the eyes from your skull. Soon, however, I will show you. And I thought old man sage just gave you your shapes. My history stretches before him and the tailed beasts. Amma dropped the topless stem into the grass and stood. There is much that you have yet to learn about me, Naruto. It makes me feel guilty, given how much I know about you. Naruto watched as she disappeared into the forest but decided not to follow her this time. We can start now that you're back. That we can. Her voice echoed around him like a gentle breeze. Though, there is something I would like to ask you first. Be completely honest with me. Are you happy? As a question he had been avoiding for almost a decade. On paper, he had achieved everything he dreamed of. People respected and looked up to him as something more than a troublemaker. He became Hokage and worked to make the village a better place. The reality, however, was far different. People did not respect him for his merits but for his power. Being Hokage meant sacrificing his family's happiness. Now, He was a man with very little beyond a fancy office. When was the last time he laughed with genuine joy? When was the last time he dreamed? No, I am not happy. He bit his lip to hold back a sob. But the tears came regardless. I can't remember being happy. I remember a young boy who played pranks and played in the fields. His hope eventually soothed my rage. Amma appeared once more with a basket of fruit. He set out to change the world. And he got lost and died. He saw reality and couldn't take it. Naruto's sorrow turned to inner anger. He tried to ignore the memories of his youth. It was easier to forget than to feel shame at betraying that child. No, that boy is asleep and is forced to live someone else's life. Why did you become a shinobi? Was it because you wanted to be a hero? Did you dream of becoming a murderer, a child solitaire to bring in wealth for a village that let you live in squalor? Naruto shook his head and tried to drown out the truth. He remembered when the third Hokage took him to the academy to enroll him. The small amount of money left over from his parents was running low, and the orphanage warned him that they could no longer afford to keep him there. The third Hokage, his beloved grandfather, told him that if he was an academy student, the village would be able to give him more money to live on. Once a shinobi, he could take missions to buy anything he wanted. You never had a choice to be anything but an asset to the village. The moment Minato sealed me into you, your destiny and life were taken from you and handed over to the Konoha. This world of ninjas turned that young boy who dreamed into a weapon. Her voice softened as he openly sobbed. Even now, you are just a tool for the land of fire and those that hold the true power. Shut up, please. Naruto buried his head into his hands to block out her words. I don't have a choice. If you could be anything in the world, what would you be? Amma took a seat next to him and pulled him into her. His body resisted the tugs for a moment before resting against her chest. Anything. Forget being a shinobi. Forget the village. Naruto closed his eyes as her warmth enveloped him. I don't know. And that's okay. She ran her claw through his hair. What's important is that you never stop searching for what you want in life. They remained together until the sun slipped under the horizon to reveal a star-filled heaven. Her voice, deeper yet still feminine, carried sweet lullabies that made him forget the world beyond. Then, finally, she stopped singing. Naruto, you need to wake up now. I don't want to go back. I never want to go back. He turned around to look up into her face, unafraid of the creature that stared down at him with eyes burning with compassion. Don't make me go back. Not yet. She cupped his face and bent down to bring her muzzle close. Soon, I will set you free. But, until that day comes, you need to be strong for the people you care about. Don't leave me, please. Do not worry, Naruto. I shall be with you even when darkness thinks it's blocked out the light. Remind me why I have to come with you to this. Naruto groaned and rubbed his forehead. He was starting to regret this. Because these are your students. Think of this like training for becoming Hokage. Konohamaru muttered something about wanting to go back home but followed him into the festival grounds. Little expense was spared for the festivities. With lavish decorations hanging from the trees of Senju Park and free food being offered for everyone, courtesy of Ichiraku. Hundreds of people moved between the booths, with the Dren enjoying the games and trying to win prizes while the adults chatted among themselves. Overall, it seemed less culty than Naruto expected. Can you at least win me a stuffed bear or something? Naruto glared at Konohamaru. This isn't a date. Good. You're not my type of guy. Konohamaru shrugged and looked at the free ramen being served. Mind if I grab a bowl? I'm starving. Whatever. I'm going to look around. Meet me at the center stage in an hour. Naruto rolled his eyes as his student left. He wanted to go back to sleep, and maybe talk more to Amma. Just a dream. Remember that. Was it just a dream? The thought made his head hurt, and he decided it was better to just focus on scoping out the church. By the time he reached the center, he was disappointed to find nothing amiss. That should have been a good thing, but some of him wanted to find something off about the group so he could take care of it immediately. If there was something truly off with the church, he would have to launch a much more extensive investigation. That posed the risk of causing a lot of angry people since they had little probable cause. He spotted Boruto talking with a group of friends, debating if he should approach the boy. Tenten's offer of a guaranteed accident brought a smile to his face. He hated to admit it, but it would solve one of the biggest headaches in his life. Papa, over here, Papa, Himawari's voice thundered over the crowd. She appeared from behind Boruto and waved her hands while jumping. His son groaned but forced a smile onto his face. No need to yell, Sunflower. Naruto approached the group of kids and rubbed the back of his head. He only knew a handful of them as shinobi, the rest being children from civilian families. How's it hanging, guys? Fine, Dad. Boruto crossed his arms. What are you doing here? Oh, you know, just walking around and wasting some time. Heard from Konohamaru that you helped set some of this up. I'm impressed. That's a first. Come on, guys, let's go grab some ramen. Sure, that sounds good. Naruto grinned at his son. Free ramen is always good. Boruto hesitated for a moment. We're going to the members-only section. For the church. They have a special section reserved for us. So we're going to eat over there. So, you're a member. Naruto maintained his aloof fatherly tone to keep back his unhappiness at the revelation. Your mother never mentioned anything of the sort to me. He glanced at the bouncing Himawari. Are you a member of the church? Nope. Big brother says they are going to let me join tonight. I think it's better to discuss this a little bit first. Naruto took her hand and smiled at his daughter. Luckily, Himawari was a total daddy's girl. Boruto's facade cracked with a snarl. That's not your choice. She wants to join. I'm her father, so I'll make that call. Thanks for your input. Naruto turned away but stopped when Himawari yelped as Boruto grabbed her arm. Himawari, if you go, you'll burn in the fires of the end. Boruto pulled her back. The Red God, SS will abandon you if you turn your back on us. Naruto's anger burst forth in a surge of speed, snatching Himawari and pushing Boruto to the ground. Watch your mouth. We have a snake in the garden. This is just what Sister Ayame warned would happen. The phrase caused a shift in the atmosphere of the festival. People started to look their way with a hint of suspicion and hostility. Naruto maintained his composure, ignoring the screaming Boruto and picking up Himawari. His path out of the central area was blocked by a line of men looking unhappy. Why take the girl away? She needs to be saved. To think you would lay your hands on your own kid. My mother always said you were a demon. Deep breath. Count to 3. Exhale. I am leaving with my daughter. Naruto took a step forward. Step aside. His charisma failed as the gathering crowd started to grow angry. He looked around for Flamingo but found that his normal knight Anbu was missing. The chiming of a bell caused all heads to turn to the stage at the center of the festival. People around him began chanting in a strange tongue, raising their hands in praise as Ayame walked to a podium. Even Boruto, seconds away from another outburst, looked utterly enthralled. Brothers and sisters, welcome. Ayame stared down at him with a smile. We are gathered here to celebrate the coming of a new age. There is no need for violence or hate. Our dear Hokage, who has saved us twice, wishes to depart our garden, so I say let him depart. The men moved without hesitation, creating an exit for him among the sea of gathering people. Those who cannot see the beauty of our actions will be denied paradise. They will be denied, chanted the crowd in response. They will be denied. Go, Lord Hokage, and leave this flock. Sister Ino has tried to open your heart, yet your hubris stops you from embracing the path forward. Naruto did not wake in the forest nor under the lustful touches of Amma. Instead, he stood in a stony valley next to a parched savanna under a blistering sun. Antelopes grazed on yellow and brown grasses, unaware or unbothered by the afternoon heat. At the same time, zebras trotted towards a pitiful stream of murky water barely a foot high. The beasts paused as a line of wretched creatures descended down the valley's slopes towards the creek. Their clumsy movements showed they struggled to walk on 2 legs, with the worst of the creatures preferring to walk on their knuckles like apes. The comparison between the animals and apes continued as Naruto approached them. Thick black hair covered their bodies like a chimpanzee, while their faces resembled that of a human with lengthened snouts and broad jaws. They did not speak, but grunted and whimpered to one another, yet something in their eyes reminded Naruto of himself. No amount of hair, however, could hide the starvation slowly killing each one. Neither fat nor muscle clung to their frail forms. They were doomed to extinction. Amma appeared next to him in her vulpine form, though she did have the decency to cover herself with a silk shawl. The world has changed much since their arboreal ancestors decided to walk the surface. A drought dried much of the planet, making life hard for all but the fastest or mightiest animals. These were neither. Naruto watched one of the smaller ape creatures, an infant, drop to the ground. The others did not pay any attention to its pitiful cries beyond an empty stare that barely hinted at sorrow. He moved forward to help but paused when Amma took his hand. "Stay. You cannot help her." "Why?" Naruto tried to break her grip. "Because this is a memory." She glanced at him. "My memory. Ah, he comes. Father, father." A giant ape creature departed from the group to scope the discarded youngling into his arms. He cradled her gently to soothe her suffering before walking towards the stream to allow her a chance to drink. The zebras, content with their neighbors, joined the ape creatures to drink what little water remained. Naruto watched the scene with a frown, wondering why. The monkey men did not kill one of the zebras for food. "Are you the little monkey?" "No." Amma focused solely on the creatures drinking with an oddly motherly smile. "But I am here." "Where?" "Everywhere." Seeing him unsatisfied with her answer, she chuckled and shook her head. "The form from which I watched this scene is beyond your current understanding. Perhaps, in time, we will rewatch this again so you may see me." She paused as the ape creatures started to forage for seeds and berries from the numerous bushes and tall grass. Each found barely a handful, far from enough to satisfy their hunger. Father split his meager meal with the infant. Is she his daughter? No. Then why is he giving her his food? Does one need to be family to be shown compassion? Amma's tone took a sharp edge. That is the Hokage in you speaking. Abandon such thoughts, Naruto. They do not suit you. He flinched at her words, suddenly ashamed for asking such a ridiculous question. I show you this moment because it is the most important moment in my life that I am willing to share with you at this time. This one's compassion for the orphaned girl changed my life and this world's fate. As the dusk cast long shadows across the savannah, the ape creatures returned to their cliff-side caves to take shelter from the encroaching night and the numerous predators looking for an easy meal. Once the sun slipped entirely beneath the horizon and the moon's reign began, the light show started. It began simply enough with a shooting star that cut through the night sky, leaving a trail of gold to scar the darkness. Golden rays slithered from the heavens to form a pillar of light at the bottom of the valley. One by one, confused faces appeared in the mouths of the caves to watch the ethereal display. A brief surge of courage called Father to climb down from his shelter to stand before the light. Soon, the others joined him, though they maintained some distance. Their near-human eyes glistened as beams of silver light danced among them. Each of them stood perfectly still as if caught in a trance, with even Naruto finding it hard to look away. Some of the ape creatures raised their hands to the sky, wiggling clumsy fingers, while others moved their crude lips in odd patterns as if mimicking speech. None of them seemed impressive, yet the potential existed for something extraordinary. The show ended instantly, leaving confused animals behind that returned to their homes quickly. However, Father remained behind to stare up at the stars with wide eyes dazzled with fresh understanding. He studied each star and reached out to grab the moon but frowned upon finding he needed to be taller. With an irritated, dissatisfied grunt, he departed for home. And he became the first animal on the planet to look up at the stars and wonder. Amma closed her eyes as the scene changed to a future afternoon. The ape creatures came down to the stream to drink and look for food, but once again, they only managed to find enough to stave off death for another day. The young ape girl, brought down from the caves by Father, looked far weaker than the day before. Naruto guessed the poor thing wouldn't make it through the night before passing out. The giant ape seemed to have reached the same conclusion as he sat next to the emaciated form of the little one. His eyes, filled with sorrow and new emotion, hardened and gazed out over the savannah. The zebra and antelope approached the stream for their share of water like usual, barely acknowledging the dying species. Yet, Father seemed to stare at the animals with a look that separated himself from every other creature that roamed. Father's lips twisted into a savage, silent snarl as his hands curled into fists. Intelligent eyes looked around at the ground and other apes as if trying to find something. hands uncurled upon noticing the large stone lying next to the dying ape child. A mixture of confusion, wonder, and anger flashed over the primitive features of the creature as he picked the rock up and dropped it back down on the ground. He is thinking. He imagines a world where he and his kind were not hungry. Amma leaned forward with a grin that split her vulpine muzzle into two. He does not want the little one to die. Father picked the stone up but did not drop it back down. Instead, he took a tentative step to the nearest zebra, an older foal starting to become independent. Upon seeing the beast continue to drink, he eked forward and raised the rock above his head. The attack came without warning and ended swiftly. In a single blow, Father smashed the foal's skull in and cried out in triumph. The other zeb, scattered at the unfamiliar sound from such a familiar species, unaware of the new age that had just dawned on the savannah. Those ape creatures nearest to him came over to investigate the unique sound and watched with awe as their new leader tasted flesh for the first time. He kept the others back for the moment until the ape girl tasted the bloody prize and allowed the other to partake in the feast. None of the ape creatures went home hungry that night. The memory faded as the familiar scent of spring filled Naruto with warmth. In an instant, Amma teleported them back to his dreams. What were those things? Naruto had never seen such an animal before and imagined what alien world they came from. Why did you teach them? Teach. Amma sat under the sakura tree and patted tea. He grasped beside her as if commanding him to join her. You overestimate what I did. I merely suggested certain things to them and allowed your ancestors' natural intelligence to do the rest. Ancestors. Naruto shuddered at the thought of being related to such creatures. He knew of fringe theories that stated that mankind came from some type of primate instead of being handcrafted by Amma Terasu, but always found such notions silly. While far from being devout, there existed certain truths that he honored. I am not one of them. Amaterasu created all of us in her blessed image. Those beings you look down upon are the source of everyone you ever loved and respected. Those 60 primates are the far-removed grandparents of humanity created by natural selection stretching back into the primordial ages of the world. She yawned slightly and lay down in the grass. As for Amaterasu, I did not create you or your ancestors, much less in my image. You are not Amaterasu. The sheer lunacy of the statement almost made Naruto laugh. Still, the look on Amma's face made it clear that the woman was being serious. You are not her. There are no stories where Amaterasu is a giant fox monster. True. However, do you honestly believe all the stories? Some of those claims about me are bizarre. She removed her shawl with a giant tug to expose her breasts. Then again, the truth is far stranger than the fiction. Naruto rolled his eyes and began to undress. I refuse to believe that Amaterasu walks around as a fox or fox woman and gets her head stuck in peanut butter jars. Fair enough. One day, you'll see that I am right. She smirked slightly, and we both agreed that I never got my head stuck in any jar. Totally did not happen. Just a figment of your imagination. Right. He laid down and pulled her into his embrace. If you're Amaterasu, then I'm a monkey man. Amma began a trail of kisses down his neck and ran her claws down his back. She wrapped her tails around him to pull him closer. It saddens me that your kind has forgotten so much about yourselves. Instead of embracing a system that cares little for the individual, I had expected your kind to have reached the stars again. She paused in her intimacy and pulled back with wide eyes that sparkled with glee. That's it. Yes, that will open your eyes perfectly. Naruto frowned as his lover pulled away and disappeared into the forest. Man, just as I was starting to get into that fox form. Is Big Brother in trouble? Naruto NCED down at his daughter and smiled warmly. They sat together on the couch in his office, looking over one of her many books depicting the animals of the world. He decided to let her stay at his house the previous night, given the incident at the festival, and sent one of his Anbu to notify Hinata. Conflicting emotions swirled in his mind about the new church, Boruto, and Ayame's words to him. A part of him, much larger than he would admit to anyone, wanted to visit the church with an entire host of ninjas behind him and put an end to their madness by force. However, his rational Sid warned against a heavy-handed approach that could lead to violence, knowing that the daimyo would not look kindly upon him slaughtering civilians. While his powers as Hokage were nearly limitless, Certain boundaries could never be crossed. That has yet to be seen. Your mother is talking with him right now. He hated forcing Hinata to handle the situation with Boruto. Still, he knew E-boy hated him enough and would refuse to listen to anything he said. At least Hinata had a chance to deter him from becoming a fanatic. Shizune entered the office, followed by a servant from the Hyuga. Sorry to interrupt, Lord Hokage, but Hinata sent someone to pick up Himawari. But I'm reading with Papa. Himawari waved her book at Shizune with a hefty frown. We are looking at monkeys. Naruto took the book from his daughter and kissed her forehead. We'll continue this next week over a big bowl of ramen. Sounds pretty good, He grinned as the girl cheered and ran to take the servant's hand. How is Boruto? Lady Hinata's son is being difficult at the moment. Lord Hiashi wishes to speak with you this evening at the compound. With the invitation delivered, the man left the office quickly. Tenten dropped from the ceiling and removed her mask to reveal a smile full of pity. She rubbed the back of her head. Looks like you're in for an evening full of fun. Get bent. Naruto returned to his desk and began to brood at the prospect of having to spend time with the Hyuga clan. Between their creepy eyes and overly formal social customs, he Ted sending a shadow clone to deal with it instead of showing up personally. But, unfortunately, Hiashi knew that tactic from the numerous meetings after the divorce. Tenten took a seat and placed her feet on the desk. So, I tried to talk with Father Yayoi. Turns out he never checked into the hotel like he was supposed to, nor did he decide to leave early. After your meeting ended, he walked out and seemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. Did you check the barrier team? I doubt some random priest can just disappear in our village like that. If so, we really need to start training our sentries more. His humor died as Tenten's smile faded into a thin line. He took a deep breath and braced for the bad news. Yeah, I did. They don't even have a record of him coming into the village. Excuse me, zero traces of him ever stepping through the front gates. We have CCTV footage of him entering the tower and talking with Shizune. Before that, however, nothing. It's like he appeared out of nowhere. I cross-referenced every camera from here to the front gate, looking for any frame with him in it. Nothing. Either that priest was trained as a master ninja or that wasn't Father Yayoi. Naruto frowned at the implications. Could have been someone already in the village using genjutsu or a henge of some type. Did you pick up an thing from the camera at the front door? Nothing. It is like he appeared out of nowhere and walked through the front doors. I spent all morning trying to find a blind spot that possibly could have allowed someone to slip through. But everything is tighter than a nun's ass. Naruto closed his eyes and leaned back to digest this unpleasant surprise. Tracking whoever entered his office LDB nearly impossible given the time passed and everyone who had entered since then. More importantly, he could not imagine why anyone would pose as the priest from the church or what they would gain from it. The fake priest's details of the events involving Sasuke's suicide matched perfectly with the sealed reports. Whoever impersonated Father Yayoi knew enough about the case to fool him. Send a team out to retrieve the real Father Yayoi. Beyond that, I want the village to be placed on heightened alert. Cancel all vacation and have all active forces brought up to combat readiness. Naruto watched as Tenten's eyes widened at the declaration. Between this and what happened last night, someone is plotting against the village. How do you know that the Church of the Red Goddess and what happened to Father Yayoi are connected? Simple. I don't. Naruto grabbed his cloak and threw it over his shoulders. However, the fact that all of this has happened in a short frame is too much of a coincidence for me to ignore. Tenten scrambled out of her chair to follow him out of the office. Where the hell are you going? Church. You're actually going to confront them in their building yourself. Yup. Naruto flashed a foxy grin at her. Remember who you're talking to. That's exactly why I am worried. Tenten placed her mask on and bowed. I'll be right behind you, Lord Hokage. No. Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder. As Hokage, I need to remind them that I am in charge. My statement will be far more powerful if I am alone. She hesitated but nodded in the end. I will be on standby if anything happens. The Black Cathedral loomed over the district buildings like Cronus, ready to devour its children. From 3 blocks away, Naruto heard the midday chanting of the congregation. It felt a shiver run up his spine at the wrongness of the language. It reminded him of the common tongue mixed with syllables no human mouth should have been able to make. The noise oppressed all other sounds, blocking out even the chattering of the crowds who seemed unaffected by the singing. How such a thing could occur without causing a noise complaint to the civil authorities remained a mystery to him. Gardens of exotic and local flora surrounded the cathedral on all sides. People gathered around statues of the Red Goddess, a feminine figure in flowing robes and hair tied into twin buns decorated with ribbons. Many dancers surrounded the goddess and looked upon her with faces twisted in equal measures of terror and desire. Their bodies contorted into bone-breaking shapes that added to their suffering. A few of the more zealous members of the church tried to mimic the dancers but only ended up stumbling around the statues. "Where have I seen you?" Naruto rubbed his chin as he examined one of the statues with narrowed eyes. Then, it came like a jolt of lightning. The statues were near-perfect copies of the one in Ichiraku, even down to the horrific dancers. "I built the one in Ichiraku to match these," Ayame approached from one of the groups. She wore a brown robe like a monk, and her hair was tied up in a manner similar to the Red Goddess's. "Though, I must admit that my artistic abilities are not as good as the masons in the capital." Naruto turned to the woman and placed the steel mask of the Hokage on. "They are disturbing beyond words. How can anyone think them holy as beyond me?" Ayame winced at his tone and bowed her head. "I expected you to come here, Lord Hokage. It warms my heart to see there is still some reason left in your head." Naruto gave the statue one final disdainful look before giving Ayame his undivided attention. "You or I do not come with a host of Anbu to put your church down. Last night got out of hand. I apologize for the actions of the flock. Such behavior does not just appear suddenly." Naruto gestured to the cathedral. "Indoctrination happens over a period through the use of many strategies. Between Shikamaru and my son, you have managed to sink your claws deep into Konoha. We mean no ill will towards you or the village." Ayame sighed and began to walk towards the cathedral. "Let's speak inside. Allow me to clear some things up." Naruto followed close behind the woman, lashing a quick signal to Tenten to maintain distance. Much like the exterior, the cathedral's interior lacked the warmth of other churches and temples Naruto had visited in his travels. More UES of the Red Goddess looked down on the rows of pews leading to a main altar decorated with candles and flowers. Thankfully, none of the dancers appeared with the goddess. However, her many suggestive poses seemed more fitting for a whore than a divine being. People, civilians, and ninjas filled the air with chanting that seemed like the ramblings of a madman. Ayame guided him into a peaceful side chamber that blocked out the sound of the central area. A statue of the Red Goddess stared down at them with a motherly smile and a robe partly open to reveal her breasts. "Apologies. We are in the middle of a holy week. Normally, things are much quieter. I'm surprised the civilian council hasn't fined the hell out of you." Naruto took a seat on the pew next to Ayame and watched as the woman leaned forward in prayer. He took the time to stare at the Red Goddess, noting her attractiveness. Most of the civilian council is partaking in the festival. Ayame shuddered as Naruto sent a glare at her. "Many merchants and business owners have joined the church due to me. They think it will get them better deals with my company. Wouldn't be the first time in history such a thing has happened." Naruto thought back to the brief history lessons given by Jiraiya. Converts rarely joined a faith out of sheer belief. Monetary gain proved a far more effective means of luring people in. "Such things have made you and the church very powerful. Shikamaru used to be my top advisor. You have influence over almost every facet of the village between him and the council." "Have any of the clans embraced the church?" "No. A few missionaries have tried to establish conversations with the Hyuga and Inuzuka. But, unfortunately, their response to the blessed world was far from friendly. Therefore, we have decided not to appeal to the clans as a whole." Naruto chuckled at the thought of someone trying to convert Hiyashi or Hinata to the church. Father and daughter, while different in many ways, were opinionated beyond belief. It would be a cold day in hell before either submitted to a religion. If only his son had inherited such a trait. "I am not crazy, Naruto." Ayame closed her eyes and put her hands together once more in prayer. "You are not crazy either. I know you can see what the world is becoming. The coming of the Goddess gives us the hope to make it through the dark days we live in. We hope to save as many people as possible through our works. Dark days. The world is at more peace than ever before. Is it? We live in a world where we train our children to kill. We live in a world where the wealthy elite robs people of what they need to gain luxury. You might have brought the nations together, Naruto. But what will happen when things return to the way they were? Our current system needs war to survive. If there is no war, how can a place like Konoha survive? Seeing his deep frown, Ayame continued with more passion. Do you remember the cannon that the fourth Raikage had hidden from the other cage? That weapon had the power to blow up the moon with a single burst of energy. You might have saved Hinata and the world, but a single-handedly caused an arms race for more powerful tools of destruction. Do you know that Gaara is building a bomb capable of splitting the atom? Naruto frowned at such a detail. However, his spies in Suna reported that his old friend had put a lot of money into research and development. It seemed so unlike his friend to build such a weapon. Kumo has their cannon, which has most likely been replaced by something far more powerful. Iwa, much like Suna, is working on a bomb that does not require chakra. Kiri seems interested in sealing N.D. has been going through the ruins of Uzu in search of anything that could give them an edge. Imagine a scenario where the great powers of our world decide to use these weapons against each other. Mankind is marching towards its own destruction. Everything we know is coming to an end, Naruto. The church offers people hope and shelter from a world on the verge of collapse. We are not out to take over Konoha or any other country. There won't be a Konoha in the future with how things are going. I won't let that happen. Naruto's fingers curled inwards as the desire to strike the woman down swelled. The world isn't ending. To deny it will only bring more suffering to those you love. Ayame remained looking at the Red Goddess but placed her hand on Naruto's knee. Do you know she has been with us from the start? Even among the faithful, there is a misconception that she is a new goddess coming to replace the old. That's simply not true. Our goddess had watched humanity for countless ages, guiding us down the right path. If she has been guiding us, why is the world coming to an end? Because we refused to listen to her. Ayame gave a sad smile. Do not worry about the congregation anymore. I shall speak with the priests and priestesses to have them tone down some of the more inflammatory preachings. At the end of the day, I am loyal to you. It is due to our past relationship that I do not shut this place down. Naruto sighed heavily and shook his head. You and your father treated me well when no one else would. Despite recent events, I still view you as a friend. Therefore, I expect no more issues from your church. A package has arrived for you, Lord Hokage. Naruto glanced up from his paperwork to stare at the brown box in Shizune's arms. I didn't order anything. Who's it from? Doesn't say. Shizune placed the box on the coffee table. The Anbu have already scanned it for threats. I thought you ordered a new pair of running shoes the other day from Kumo. Naruto approached the box with a raised eyebrow and looked it over for any distinguishing marks. The only thing remotely of interest was the slight lingering odor of perfume that clung to the cardboard. Nah, those got shipped to my house directly. Is it a blow-up doll? Tenten dropped from the ceiling with a kunai at the ready. Mind if I do the honors, sir? No and yes. He stepped aside to allow his bodyguard to slice the top open. If you die in a fiery explosion, can I have your stuff? Those yaoi mangas are probably worth a pretty penny, given how many you own. Sorry, those are to be donated straight to the Church of the Red Goddess. Should give one of those nutter butters a heart attack. Tenten carefully inserted the kunai and pulled away from her. Sensing no trouble, she pulled the flaps back and frowned at the large amounts of packing peanuts. And who dropped this off? Don't know. I found it by the front door and haven't checked the cameras. Shizune took a step behind Naruto. Well, what the hell is it? It's a plate of sorts. Tenten pulled out a golden disc from the hoard of peanuts. Groaning at the mess in the making, she looked it over once for seals or other traps before handing it off to Naruto. The golden disc contained strange symbols of lines and shapes. A small latch opened the disc to reveal a golden platter with a worn image and lettering that Naruto could not decipher. He turned it over and ran his fingers over the equally spaced groves. What the hell is it? Shizune picked up the case to examine it. Odd. Binary. Seeing the confused looks on Tenten and Naruto's faces, she continued. Binary is a type of number system used in old pieces of technology. All numbers are represented with a series of ones and zeros. So, this thing ain't from here. Who the hell is sending me junk? Naruto handed Tenten the record and returned to his desk. Maybe it's a gift, suggested Shizune, still examining the cover. Though, I am unsure of what it is exactly. Besides the binary, I can't even begin to understand what the other symbols mean. I am preparing you. No, humanity a gift to remind you of what is possible. Ama's words rang in his mind. Why would the fox give him a glorified dinner plate? APS the fox was starting to go eccentric with age. Can you decipher it? Maybe. Shizune took a seat on the couch with the cover and record. There is a pattern to symbols that tells us that someone designed it in a particular way. Do you mind if I take it home with me tonight? I can help. Tenten grinned and plopped down on the couch. We'll order some food and have some fun. At least you two will have a good time. Naruto glanced at the clock and groaned. I better get going before Hiyashi sends me an escort. The night is quite lovely, isn't it, Byakugan princess? It would be far nicer if you weren't here. You wound me, fair one. I am trying to make conversation. I wish I could do more than just harm you. Hinata Hyuga glared at Tonari with nothing short of raw disgust. She did not enjoy the man's company, remembering their past encounters all too well. She questioned her father's decision to allow the man a spot during the clan's meeting with Naruto. Between Boruto's new friends and recent events within her family, it amazed Hinata that her headache wasn't far worse. Sadly, the Moon Man's pitiful attempts at friendship or flirting rated to bring a full-scale migraine attack. The meeting had yet to begin, and she already wished for it to be over. I suggest you put some distance between yourself and my daughter. Ai's sudden arrival saved her from another round of Tonari. Lord Hokage should be here any moment, so please take your seats. The elderly man hobbled over to the front of the room and took a seat next to Hanabi. They exchanged a few quiet words before the heiress gestured for Hinata. It is only right that you sit with us. Hanabi smiled at her sister. You might not be the heiress, but you represent the heart of the Hyuga. Hiyashi smiled at his daughter's words. Well said, young one. Your station within the Uzumaki clan does not matter within these halls. You will always be my daughter and welcome by my side. Alas, if only I had believed such things sooner in life. The past does not matter, father. Hinata took the seat next to Hiyashi with a slight grin. We are one family now and forever. Indeed. Hiyashi closed his eyes and sighed. Lord Hokage has arrived. Elders, I will stress the importance of sociability. These are dark days, and our clan requires friends if we are to survive. Lord Hokage is a powerful ally that is free from the red chains. Yes, Lord Hiyashi. The elders, most of whom were around Hinata's age, bowed. They came from both the main and branch houses. A historic first and a hopeful sign of change in the conservative clan. Hiyashi had outlawed the application of the cage bird seal and vowed to unite both sides of the Hyuga into one family. One of the servants pushed open the screen door to give Naruto entrance into the assembly hall. Presenting, the 7th Hokage. He rolled his eyes at the formal display, still disliking the overly polite ways the Hyuga governed themselves. Luckily, after the divorce, the Hyuga never invited him to family gatherings unless they needed something from the village. He suspected that this time was no different but paused upon noticing Tonari. What the hell are you doing here? Naruto pointed at the Otsutsuki male with a grin. You aren't preparing to throw the moon at the world again, are you? Of course not. Apologies for not announcing my presence to you, Naruto. I come as a representative of my people. Tonari dipped his head in respect. They wanted to be here but are on an important mission right now. Representative of your people, I thought your clan was all dead. Naruto glanced at Hiyashi in hopes of an explanation. What's going on? He is representing the Hyuga's allies in the coming days. Hiyashi waited for him to take a seat before continuing. There is corruption poisoning the world right now, Naruto. But, unfortunately, I have turned a blind eye to it for far too long, failing to recognize the taint until it was too late. Hanabi leaned forward with a more pleasant demeanor. What are your thoughts on the Church of the Red Goddess? You and Konohamaru went to the festival last night. I heard things got rather heated. Heated is certainly a way to put it. Naruto glanced for a glass of water and sighed upon finding nothing. I am still amazed how I never noticed this group until now. They're crazier than a fox. Their doctrine is apocalyptic to the extreme and barely hides its disdain for any establishment beyond the church. A polite response, Hiyashi mused with a smile. Everything you say here will not be spoken to anyone beyond these walls. But allow me to be far blunter. The Church of the Red Goddess is a cult that seeks to consume the world in fire. They, and the being that controls them, are the single greatest threat our world has ever faced. Naruto maintained his composure in the face of Hiyashi's usual dramatics. I agree that they are cult-like, but you make it sound like they are actively plotting against all of us. Of course, he had suspicions that the church's recent conversions were part of a grand scheme, but no one outside his inner circle needed to know that. Ayame gave me her word that she will tone things down. And you believe her? Hiyashi frowned with disappointment. I expected far more from you. It is beyond me how you could allow those zealots to humiliate yourself last night. Where is the man who can face off against Madara Uchiha? Where is the man who summoned thousands of clones to aid the besieged Shinobi Alliance? That man is trying to avoid a bloodbath. Naruto's face hardened at the accusation of weakness. What would have happened if I used force against the civilian populace? Such an action would have only increased their zeal and could have caused a full-scale riot. Beyond that, the daimyo is already looking at Konoha with increased scrutiny due to Sasuke's suicide. I agree. Such an action would have played into the cult's theology. Hanabi folded her hands on the table. Their doctrine speaks of being persecuted by the old world government. Naruto using physical force could have triggered them into self-fulfilling their prophecies. We must subtly move again. Saint the cult to avoid escalating the situation. Naruto frowned at the implication that this was a joint effort. Why does the Hyuga care about the church? Beyond Boruto, I have not seen any of your number among their ranks. Hiyashi tapped his cane against the table like a judge. My devotion to Konoha is more than enough for me to care. Devotion. Naruto fought back the urge to laugh at such a notion. Weren't you the same man to threaten to move his clan to Suna during my divorce? Silence, even Hinata looking surprised that Naruto would wield such a fact against Hiyashi. The Church of the Red Goddess is a threat to the village, Naruto admitted, channeling the energies of the past Hokage in hopes of a rousing speech to calm Konoha's most prominent clan. I am doing everything in my power to ensure that Konoha remains safe and free of the church's influence. If the need arises, I will call upon your clan to aid me in purging the threat. However, until that time comes, I do not want your clan to start a fight and worsen the situation. Sectarian violence is something that I will not tolerate from anyone, including the church and the Hyuga. He turned to look at Tonari and gave a sad smile. Apologies for Lord Hiyashi calling you away from your isolation. This is a Konoha matter, and I believe it best if you do not get involved. Hiyashi's collected calm shattered in a fit of rage. You're making a mistake, boy. Do you honestly believe that Ayame will rein her cult in? I am doing the right thing. Naruto matched the man's anger with a growl. What do you wish for me to do? March upon the church and slaughter its members down to the last child. If that is what it takes. No price is too great for survival. Father. Hinata and Hanabi gasped. Naruto closed his eyes and released a much-needed sigh. He wanted nothing more than to retreat to his office for a well-deserved bottle of sake. For your sake, Lord Hyuga, I'll pretend this part of the conversation never happened. I am ordering you to stand down and leave the matter to me. Sensing the growing tension building in her father, Hinata decided to shift the conversation. Boruto is refusing to listen to me about the church. He believes that you're trying to turn me against him. I have tried numerous things to get him to open up, but nothing seems to work. Konohamaru mentioned that he has brought up becoming a priest, Hanabi added with a frown. He wants to dedicate his existence to the cult. Of course he does. Naruto rubbed his temples as a new headache swelled in his skull. Boruto, despite claiming to be an independent thinker, always wanted to be part of a group and feared being the odd one out. In all honesty, this shouldn't have surprised him. His son had the perfect personality to be lured into a cult. For the church, Bringing in the Hokage's son presented a fantastic opportunity to legitimize themselves. Of course, he could intervene and bring his son to heel by force, but that would only feed their desires for persecution. Allow it. Hiashi closed his eyes. It is better to keep your enemies close than at a distance. Boruto has inherited his father's love of gab and could spill vital information. A good solution, mused Naruto. While he would get little from his son, Boruto would run his mouth to Hinata or Himawari. Who could relay the information to him? It wasn't as good as a spy, but it gave him access to the inner workings of the church. No, I will not have my son through his life way. Hinata shook her head. I forbid him from becoming a tool in this fight. Aren't we all just tools of Konoha? Hiyashi's stern voice silenced Hinata's protests. This is for the good of the clan and Konoha. Do you agree, Lord Hokage? I do not like it, but I will not stop you. Naruto avoided Hinata's hurt look in favor of staring at the ceiling. However, I expect you to hand over any information gained to my Anbu. I will have Panda collect weekly reports from you. Understand? Of course, sir. While far from happy, Naruto could tell that Hiashi had been appeased for the moment. The last thing Konoha needed was a rekindling of the feud between him and the Hyuga. Hinata, please keep detailed notes on whatever the boy speaks about. Any detail could be important. So, I am to spy on my own child. Naruto shook his head. No, just record what he gives without pressuring him. Let him do the hard work. Then, unwilling to continue the meeting nor look upon Hinata's disapproving expression, he decided to leave. I have paperwork that requires my attention. I assume you can continue without me. Indeed, Lord Hokage. Have a good night. Naruto closed his eyes and savored the sweet plum wine's melody of flavors on his tongue. While he had promised Shizune and Tenten to stay clear of alcohol, recent events seemed like a valid excuse to bend the promise. He knew when to stop to avoid a repeat of passing out or having one of his underlings discover the few bottles that remained hidden in the office. Despite being drunk half the time, Tsunade certainly knew how to hide things from her assistant. As a token of appreciation, he vowed to take the old woman out for dinner. Let's see. Budget or patrol reports. He glanced down at the scrolls in front of him, debating which one required his attention first. Konoha's budget needed reviewing every other week to ensure the proper allocation of funds to critical departments. The Church of the Red Goddess, and the situation surrounding them, required an increase in propaganda and security. Meanwhile, the Academy continued to operate at acceptable efficiency with reduced funding. On the other hand, patrol reports included reports from agents beyond the Land of Fire. Ayame's apocalyptic ramblings about super weapons concerned him, and he was eager to find out if any of his spies mentioned anything of the sort. No one had been assigned to look for such information, but Naruto knew someone was bound to uncover something soon enough. Ring, ring, ring. Naruto grabbed his cell phone. Hokage's office. Naruto speaking. Ru-2. Shikamaru. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the strained voice of his former advisor. He had not expected the man to call, expecting Shikamaru to be upset at the recent reassignment to the academy. The late hour only added to the confusion. How can I help you? Naruto. That's my name. Don't wear it out. He forced a chuckle to maintain the illusion of positivity. What's going on? There was a long pause. Memorial stone in 30 minutes. Click. The call ended abruptly. Naruto tossed the cell phone on the desk and grabbed his jacket. He debated calling Tenten or one of his other guards to escort him to the meeting but decided against it. Few people in the world could match him in raw strength. And none of them lived in Konoha. Yet, despite everything, he still trusted Shikamaru's intelligence to shine through the church's teaching. He knew the Ma-en wouldn't drag him out of the office for nothing. Plus, when was the last time Shikamaru stayed up past 9? As expected, Shikamaru was waiting for him in front of the large black stone, illuminated by the faint glow of a lantern. He looked like hell despite wearing a clean shinobi uniform. Thick black circles hung low under bloodshot eyes, puffy with tears. Black pustule spots blemished his face, oozing a rancid liquid that filled the air with the scent of rot. Worst of all, lips, once vibrant, had dulled into a gray color as if belonging to a corpse rather than a man still walking. Naruto, horrified at his friend's state, rushed forward but paused when Shikamaru raised a revolver in his direction. "Don't," the Nara commanded. "I don't know if I am contagious." Contagious. Naruto remembered looking through the files relating to Orochimaru's bio-weapon research. Not even the worst viruses managed to make someone look this awful. "Just lower the gun, Shika. Tell me what's going on." He reached for his cell phone and silently cursed at leaving it behind in his office. The Red Goddess odds of victory are at a stable 99%. It has won itself well over these past 12 years, managing to stick its tendrils into every nation's government. Shikamaru lowered his revolver slightly. The church, through careful conversions and appeals to a disgruntled populace, is estimated to become the dominant religious force on the continent within the next 6 months based on current trends. Unfortunately, though, I doubt the world will last that long. What are you talking about? Naruto tried to inch closer but paused as the gun came back up. Just need to hear you better, bud. Shikamaru shook his head and tapped the barrel on the side of his head. I ran through the scenario over 1,000 times, trying different combinations of moves and strategies. Nothing worked. It planned for all possible combinations of situations and reactions. How could anyone hope to outthink that which has thought since before the beginning of time? Give me the gun, Shika. Naruto held out his hand. Let's get you to the hospital. Does Tamari know you're out here? Shikamaru's eyes darted up at the mention of his wife. I made the only winning move for her and Shikadai. Sasuke knew what was going on. He made the winning move. Naruto felt the color drain from his face at the implication. Where are Tamari and Shikadai? Better oblivion than transcendence. Shikamaru pulled back the hammer on the pistol. As your advisor, Lord Hokage, I suggest you do what is best for your family and yourself. That is my final counsel to you, friend. Death is far less troublesome than what it is planning for the world. The goddess. Shikamaru put the barrel of the gun against the side of his head. It calls itself a goddess for our amusement, but gender is a concept too primitive for it. Humans and animals have gender. It is it. Naruto felt the first tinge of panic set in. He judged the distance between himself and Shikamaru, cursing that he had not managed to close the gap a little more. A shadow clone would likely provoke the man into blowing his brains out onto the memorial stone. Have you seen this goddess? Transcendence. It seeks to consume and remake us into its own image, something not human. Shikamaru winced as fresh tears rolled down his rotting face. I am already falling apart. It wants me to forget myself. The whispers are hard to ignore. I cannot allow me to forget me. Naruto's scream was lost in the echo of the gunshot. Sapphire eyes widened at the bloody remains of his friend's ruined head. The bullet destroyed much of the right side of Shikamaru's head, exposing bits of skull and brain matter to the night air with minimal damage to the left side of the head. Much to Naruto's horror, Shikamaru did not die and still moved his jaw in an attempt to speak. A waterfall of blood poured from between the withered lips of the man, soaking the flak jacket and undershirt in crimson. The nightmare continued as he ceased trying to speak and opened his mouth wider until the jawbone snapped utterly free from the base of the skull. The tongue, extended and rounded like the tentacle of an octopus, emerged from the bloody hole to wiggle like a worm in mud. Animalistic terror froze Naruto's legs as human logic gave way to primal fear. Comprehension failed to make sense of the creature being born. The sweet plum Nay surged up from his stomach at the sight of Shikamaru's body bulging and twisting in odd angles to form new limbs from broken bones and organs mutated beyond recognition. 2 arms split into 6 Oni appendages tipped with claws akin to that of a bat. The thing that used to be Shikamaru raised its head high and bellowed an ear-shattering wail. What remained of Naruto's sanity reminded him of his duty as Hokage. Determination and courage surged life into his limbs. He took a tentative step backward but stopped upon noticing the thing looking at him through Shikamaru's dulled eyes. Experience urged him to take a cautious initiative against the creature instead of his usual blunt methods. 10 shadow clones appeared around him, each one circling the memorial stone to examine the grotesque monstrosity. The creature's tongue tendril slithered forward and danced in the air, twitching at the movements of the clones but remaining focused on the original. It remained in plaque, but extended its new limbs to brace for the inevitable assault. Naruto frowned, half expecting the horror to rush him like an animal instead of displaying intelligence. He prayed that it did not inherit Shikamaru's genius. With a subtle nod, the clones converged on the creature with an impassioned war cry that grew louder as more shadow clones appeared to join the fray. Naruto frowned as wave after wave of clones rushed forward to battle the creature. Its movement, unhindered by the limited flexibility of the human body, gave it an overwhelming agility that allowed it to counter attacks from all angles. Talon-tipped arms swirled about in broad sweeps that sliced through the clones. Each of the 6 appendages acted independently from one another but maintained unity in defense. The few clones that managed to land a hit on the creature found their attacks did nothing to slow it down despite damaging the fleshy frame. Fuck. Naruto summoned another batch of clones. ND surged his chakra in hopes of attracting backup. He watched as another regiment of clones fell in battle, cursing as the creature decided to take the offensive. It barreled through the few remaining clones towards Naruto, who managed to avoid being grappled by the tongue tendril with a well-timed slice with his kunai. The shivered bit of tongue flopped to the ground, very much alive, and wiggled towards the forest. The horror followed up the attack with all 6 talon-tipped limbs, forcing Naruto to focus solely on avoidance. Tactical options became limited as the creature's frenzy increased, earning a frustrated grunt from him at being unable to regain the attack. He tried to call upon the chakra of Amma or any other tailed beasts but found the connection cold as if it had never existed. Senjutsu required concentration that he could not spare. A sharp whistle announced the fresh combatant's entry into the fight. Naruto used the creature's hesitation to withdraw out the range of its appendages and destroyed tongue. He saw the woman, blonde and with the piercing eyes of the Hyuga, emerge from the tree line wielding a long cylinder tipped with flame. She led with a valve on the side of the contraception and aimed the nozzle. A white jet of fire spewed from the end of her weapon, engulfing the creature in a blaze. An inhumane scream echoed into the night. Her attack sputtered after a few seconds. In an instant, Naruto started to draw upon the natural energy surrounding him. He felt a surge of power through his veins as the world became alive with the life forces of all around him. However, no such warmth radiated from the burning creature, leaving a void in the landscape that chilled his soul. Azure eyes turned orange as pupils elongated. Dozens of clones appeared with a Rasengan at the ready and eager to avenge their fallen brother. Naruto signaled the attack with a cry and led the charge, slamming his twin Rasengans into the creature's back. In unison, the clones struck with their own attacks, shredding bits of meat and bone of the beast and severing each of the appendages. With a final blow, the creature dropped to the ground in a pile of gore only vaguely recognizable. Naruto took a deep breath and allowed the nature energy to dissipate from his body with a sigh of relief. How long had it been since he had a fight of intensity? The woman came forward with her weapon raised. She released another burst of fire onto the creature's remains, consuming what little remained in fresh flame until nothing remained. His mind returned to the imposter priest's description and Tenten's history lesson. Hane Hyuga, Naruto Uzumaki. They exchanged a scrutinizing glare that ended when Hane extended her hand with a nod of respect. We have a lot to talk about. I am Hyuga in name only. My father came from that accursed bloodline but decided to keep his children away from the tumultuous life of infighting and backstabbing that plagued the clan in those barbaric days before the creation of the hidden villages. He eloped with my mother, a merchant's daughter from a foreign land, till the land in order to provide my brother and I a chance to discover a life that he never had the chance to enjoy. We struggled in those days with our fates tied directly to the success of the crops, but none of us complained. My parents, even in the worst of times, managed to smile and taught us to look to the stars for hope. Things changed when mother passed away from the flu during the winter of my 10th year. Not a soul in the hamlet where we lived managed to keep grief from their hearts. Mother's kindness touched everyone's life, and things seemed dimmer after her passing. Spring arrived without the usual rain while summer came with cruel heat that burnt what little sprouted. Harvest, normally celebrated with a festival and days of merriment, came with the rumblings of empty stomachs and grumblings about the approaching winter. Taxmen from the daimyo, under pressure to gather needed supplies for the military, took what meager crops remained with hollowed promises of aid that never came. As is common in difficult times, people turned to religion for answers and prayed for divine intervention from Amaterasu. Even father, burdened by sorrow and seeing his children go to bed hungry, turned to faith to heal his broken spirit despite pervious dismissals of any formal doctrine or creed. Amaterasu answered our pleas the worst winter in the Land of Fire's history. Bitter temperatures killed the livestock. Blizzards blocked the roads, preventing caravans laden with grain from reaching the hamlet and doomed entire families to starvation. The local priest, a godly man devoted to the Eternal Mother, tried to reassure us that Amaterasu had not abandoned us. He encouraged us to sing the holy hymns and recite daily prayers with extra devotion, claiming that the sun goddess would bring a spring of rebirth for everyone. As the days grew shorter and colder, hope dwindled, and faith withered. That is when he came. The man, a foreigner dressed in unusual garbs of black silk, came to town upon a wagon drawn by a white horse. He brought us gifts of bread and dried meat in quantities that ensured no one went hungry. When asked about his identity, he claimed to be a servant of the Crimson Dreamer that had been commanded to bring aid to the suffering souls of our hamlet. People flocked to him in hopes of getting more food and to listen to his sermons about the God that had heard their prayers. He said that the Crimson Dreamer, whom slept deep within the earth since days unknowable, would never let them go hungry again. Our priest, concerned at the sudden competitor for our souls, launched a series of attacks against the outsider with claims that the man brought damnation and pleaded with us to reject the food offered by him. Most, at first, listened to the priest and maintained trust in Amaterasu, but even the most devout struggled to keep faith as winter dragged on without relief. I remember the day Fath stopped taking us to the temple in favor of listening to man who brought us salvation. By the time spring arrived, the priest stood alone in his devotion. I do not know what happened to him, but one morning, the hamlet awoke to find that the temple had been given over to the Crimson Dreamer. The stranger, still nameless to us, declared himself the prophet, to which all began to call him. The prophet taught us the path of the Crimson Dreamer, encouraging us to explore our dreams for hidden meanings sent by the slumbering God. He spoke of honoring the deity through hard work and duty to one's community. Values that resonated with my father and caused my family to become active within the new way. To those that earned his trust, the prophet gave special seeds with promises that they would grow crops far stronger and faster than anything we had seen. Those that had yet to fully embrace the Crimson Dreamer became devoted converts when they saw my father ride into town with heavy carts full of vegetables and fruit spawned from the seeds provided by the prophet. By the time of the following autumn, farmers from across the countryside flocked to our temple to receive the blessings of the Crimson Dreamers. The local authorities turned a blind eye to the new religion due to the yields provided. For the first time since my mother's death, hope returned to our world. Daisuke, my brother, never became devout. He prayed with us every evening, attended the weekly services of the prophet, and volunteered in the community kitchen to appease father but refused to give himself over completely to the teachings of the Crimson Dreamer. At first, father did not care so long as he kept up proper appearances. Things turned sour when my brother, upon turning 18, decided to leave the farm and hamlet in favor of joining the Merchants Guild in the capital. He promised to stay for the winter to ensure that the animals were properly taken care of, but Fath declared him an apostate and refused to speak with him for the few remaining weeks our family was together. I, torn between my piety and love of my brother, tried to appease both brother and father but ended up alone. One night, 3 days before Daisuke was to depart, he woke me up dressed in his traveling outfit and ordered me to gather my things. The panic in his voice matched the insanity burning in his eyes. Yet my heart followed his orders without complaint. I asked him if we should notify father of our departure but received no answer beyond a command that I keep silent. We left the farm through the fields instead of taking the path down to the main road with brother explaining that there is a caravan camped across the river that would take us directly to the capital. Our progress slowed once we entered the forest due to Daisuke's insistence that we light no lanterns, claiming that it would attract unwanted attention. The moon had reached its zenith by the time we reached the crag that marked the halfway point. Brother's paranoia grew worse as time passed, with him often staring into the darkness like he was searching for something. Paranoia twisted into anger as I struggled to keep up with his pace. The words he hurled at me, so uncharacteristically cruel, slowed my steps down until I stopped completely with tears filling my vision. "Why are you being so mean?" He turned upon me with an enraged look on his face and raised his fist as if to strike me. My flinch caused him to recoil, diminishing his flaming rage into an ash of desperation. Hane, you need to keep going. We do not have much time before they notice we're gone. What did you do? I struggled to speak as a series of sobs shook me. Are you in trouble with the law? Daisuke took a deep breath to calm down. No, something bad has happened, and I need to make sure that you're safe. What about father? He is probably worried sick. No. He shook his head as a brief fit of madness returned. Father is poisoned. He is sick and twisted. I tilted my head at the words, unable to understand the ramblings. Sick. We need to tell the prophet right away. He can help father. The mention of the prophet froze Daisuke as madness turned into a terror long thought extinct in humanity. He stumbled a few steps backwards as his breathing became labored. My cries echoed through the trees as my brother tried to regain a semblance of rationality. A high-pitched wail froze both of us in place. Daisuke's eyes widened in panic as logical thought returned. He has found us. He stared at me for a long moment with a gaze full of horror, love, and determination. His hands reached for the bag slung over his shoulder and thrusted it into my arms. I need you to run. Brother, run and do not stop until you reach the river. No matter what happens, never stop running. Another wail awoke fear within me, yet the love that shined and my brother's face gave me the courage to run. I did not flinch as the thorn brushes lashed my skin nor slowed when the uneven terrain sent me stumbling to the ground. I did not stop as my brother's screams echoed into the night. Silence reigned in the Hokage office as Hane paused to take a sip of coffee. Naruto closed his eyes and used the pause to collect his thoughts. The battle with Shikamaru, or rather what Shikamaru had become, still seemed too unreal to fully grasp. He suspected that the large amount of sake mixed into his coffee dulled his emotions enough to keep him focused on the conversation at hand. There would be a time later to grieve the loss of his friend. What happened to your brother? Tenten, sitting on the couch with a cup of coffee, looking exhausted. It was approaching 3 in the morning, and the poor woman had yet to go to bed. I never saw him again, though I suspect that his fate was gruesome. Hane placed her cup onto the desk. By dawn, I crossed the river and was found by members of the caravan out searching for my brother. They took me to the capital for an audience with the fire daimyo himself. It turns out that Daisuke had been working with the merchant guild for longer than I had thought and wrote a detailed account on the prophet's activities that he had hoped to deliver directly to the Lord of the Land of Fire. I completed my brother's mission, learning that the prophet and his cult were doing human sacrifices to the Crimson Dreamer. According to my brother's journal, Father had planned to offer me up in the following spring in hopes of becoming the prophet's student. More importantly for the daimyo, there was talks of a planned uprising that was backed by important figures within the military. For my service to the Land of Fire, the daimyo paid for my formal education and ordered that I be adopted into the main house of the Hyuga, who gladly accepted me in to appease their lord. And the prophet, whatever happened to him? The details of the matter were covered up with me only learning about what really happened from Hashirama years later. According to him, the fire daimyo called upon the Senju and Uchiha clans to aid the military in putting down the prophet and the cult of the Crimson Dreamer that had gripped many of the peasants in the northern provinces. The two clans, for the first time in their history, managed to work together in quelling the rebellion and committing the largest genocide in the nation's history. Butsuma, his father, was forced to put entire towns to the sword to destroy the cult. It is known that Tajima Uchiha led the charge against the prophet directly, slaying the crazed leader and plundering the temple of gathered relics. Tenten rolled her eyes. Of course, he did. Leave it up to the Uchiha to take a bunch of evil shit. Indeed, the incident, known as the Crimson Uprising in the few records that mention it, played a critical role in the future establishment of Konoha and other events. The daimyo and his successors began to favor ninja as the main military might instead of government-established armies. When Hashirama wanted to build the first hidden village, he used his clan's service to convince the daimyo to give him the needed land and resources. Hane frowned deeply and finished the rest of her coffee. In my opinion, I believe that the Uchiha's downfall also began during the rebellion. I suspect that the artifacts, most likely tainted, worsened their already dark mindset. Naruto poured the last of the sake into his empty mug. The similarities between the cult of the Crimson Dreamer and the Church of the Red Goddess were obvious. So, you joined the Hyuga and got some learning. That leaves out a pretty big gap between then and now. And your attempted murder of Mito Uzumaki. Tenten cracked her neck and yawned. No offense, lady, but your story seems a little too fantastical. I have never heard of this Crimson Uprising in any book. Even if it was covered up, wouldn't it have been leaked or something? I am going to need some hard evidence to believe that you're actually over 100 years old. Fair enough. Hane poured another cup of coffee and reached into her pocket for a pack of cigarettes. As you can imagine, the trauma of losing my brother and discovering what my father was planning left me in a bad state. I functioned but never healed. The Merchant Guild accepted me as an apprentice upon the completion of my education. In a few years, I managed to become one of the wealthiest women on the entire continent and used my influence to aid the Hyuga. However, the Crimson Dreamer and the cult haunted me. I started to investigate similar groups around the elemental nations and started to notice a trend. Each group, while different on the surface, contained certain themes and rituals that matched one another. For example, the Land of Wind has a monastery in the middle of the desert that worships the Sleeping Mother, a goddess that they speak with people in their dreams. They perform ceremonies that are designed to summon their goddess from her tomb under the earth. Meanwhile, in Kiri currently, there is a group of fishermen who believe that there is a new god sleeping in the ocean awaiting the coming of a Sen one to complete humanity's evolution. Naruto's eyes narrowed as the final pieces of the puzzles fell into place. And the Church of the Red Goddess believes that new god is coming soon to usher in a new age. Hane smiled and nodded her head. Wait. Tenten jumped from the couch to point at the window in the cathedral's general direction. Are you trying to tell me that this On Dreamer cult and the Red Goddess cult are the same damn thing? Hane shook her head. No, but that is what I thought at first. I believed that the prophet stole the idea of his deity from some pre-existing group. However, upon further research, I discovered religious groups spanning the globe that shared these beliefs. Digging deep revealed that these groups were not separate religions, but a single cult spread out across the world. Things changed to fit the local culture, but the underlying dogma is the same. In my studies, I have found over 200 groups with matching ideology from across human history, dating back to the civilizations that existed far before the Sage of Six Paths. They'll call the god different things but are referring to the same being. Ishtar, the Crimson Dreamer, the Red Goddess. Yeshua, Echidna, Astarte, Shub-Niggurath, the King in Yellow, the Crawling Chaos. The woman paused and stared into Naruto's eyes with an unflinching harshness. Kurama. Soft rain pattered against the sole window of Naruto's study. Dawn brought an unexpected storm that the meteorologists did not expect. Nevertheless, life continued in the street, his study overlooked. Undeterred by the thunder and lightning, he turned the page of the current tome open upon his desk and paused to watch his people go about their mundane lives. A couple walked with their young son toward the main road to the civilian school nearby, happily enjoying the downpour under a colorful umbrella. Their laughter and smiling faces reminded him of his brief happiness with Hinata. Before becoming Hokage, they always walked Boruto to the academy. Then they stopped for a quick breakfast at a small cafe by their house. He always ordered pancakes with a hearty helping of scrambled eggs, while she preferred a cinnamon roll with egg whites. The brief date, a moment of calm in a life full of obligations, refreshed their love for one another. It kept him grounded in the most important things in his life. But, like all the good things in his life, it came to a tragic end. The duties of Hokage consumed everything, leaving his family a broken shell, never to be mended again. He was a villain to his son and a ghostly father to his daughter. Hinata, the woman he promised to love forever, left their marriage doomed to a life of loneliness, unable to move on from him and too fearful to open herself again to him. Now, as the world crumbled, he was alone once more. Naruto opened the right drawer and looked down at the loaded revolver glistening in the light of his desk lamp. He removed it from the cushioned mold, running his thumb down the pearl grip. As a rule of thumb, ninja did not use firearms due to the noise and inability to enhance them with chakra. A few groups, notably Iowa, tried to deploy them on the battlefield but found limited success compared to standard tactics. As a result, only civilian militaries used any substantial number of rifles or handguns. The revolver he held came from a general in the Land of Fire's defense force as a wedding gift. He had only fired it a few times but kept it in his desk for safekeeping. His finger pushed open the cylinder. 3 rounds. He pushed the cylinder in place before pulling back the hammer to prime the weapon. His eyes returned to the withered manuscript depicting an image of a goat goddess once worshipped by a nomadic people in the jungles of the southern lands. Their shamans believed their goddess would emerge from the earth in the future to uplift chosen into a new world free from the sufferings of the old. The similarities to the Church of the Red Goddess seemed limited on the surface, but the themes matched. The next page depicted a monastery in the land of Earth that worshipped the fearful 9-tailed fox and a pantheon of kitsune deities. Kyubi, the name given to the 9 tails, was always depicted as an anthropomorphic vixen Hat looked over the blessed much like a mother would. But, according to their holy book, the Scarlet Scripture, she promised to return to them once the world got too corrupt and deliver them from the evils of humanity. Naruto tried to ignore the tears running down his face at the picture clearly inspired by Amma. He did not want to believe that Kurama, the 9-tailed fox he had befriended and trusted, could be the same entity that now worked to destroy everything he had ever known. Yet, Hane offered evidence to back up her outrageous claims in the form of 6 large books ranging from a modern treatise on religion to a book that predated the coming of Kagaya by 2,000 years. The truth could not be ignored. None of the tomes made sense on their own, with each one presenting a different conflicting narrative on the nature of the entity that spawned a cult that stretched back eons. Some painted her as an alien that crashed onto Earth billions of years before humans took their first steps. The more religious texts claimed that she is the archdevil plotting the ruin of humanity and heaven, corrupting the faithless into her service through dreams. When put together, however, the fog parted to reveal a vista that only glimpsed at the mysterious nature of the entity that sought dominion over all things. With a deep breath, he placed the revolver barrel between his lips. Shikamaru and Sasuke believed it was the only way to escape the downfall of humanity. Perhaps, he thought bitterly, this was always the way he was meant to go. As a child, those Cr. Euler villagers told him that he would die alone and unloved. Maybe their words were more prophetic than any of them could imagine. Everyone believed him limitless, expecting him to always have the courage to continue. But even he had a limit. Death would allow him to fly beyond the world's problems and grant him rest. He couldn't go on. Freedom came to those who were not afraid of the end. A sharp knock at the door forced the gun from his mouth and back into the drawer. Lord Hokage, I brought you something to eat. Ah, thank you, Tenten. You may enter. He closed the book just as Tenten pushed open the door. His stomach grumbled at the smell of chicken fried rice. You did not have to make me lunch. I could have cooked something for myself. Of course, I did not have to make you anything. I wanted to make you something. Tenten placed the bowl in front of him and stuck a pair of chopsticks in to complete the look. With Shizune sick, someone must babysit you. Figured I would take the job. She glanced at the open book, scrunching her face at the sight of the demonic vixen. How's the reading? Naruto groaned and slammed the book shut. I hate reading about subjects I like. So you can imagine the torture this stuff is. No wonder Hane is fried in the brain. You should have heard Flamingo complaining about her this morning. Apparently, the woman won't sleep in any hotel room above the 2nd floor and requires at least 2 windows in the room. Tenten sat down in the recliner next to the unlit fireplace. Do you ally believe the Kurama is this red goddess? It's possible. If so, she pulled the greatest prank on all of humanity. She even fooled the sage of 6 paths. Tenten frowned at the thought of anyone managing to outsmart the founder of all ninjas. Hypothetically, let's say that Hane is 100% correct. Kurama is really some type of ancient alien deity that wants to rule over the world. What hope do we have in stopping her? Her intelligence would be far more than anything we've encountered. Let's not even begin with what possible powers she could use. A valid Stion and one that he had been thinking about. Simple. We don't. Kurama, at least if these books are correct, is sleeping. She interacts with the world through dreams. Cull the cult. And you limit what she can actually do. He frowned and glanced down at his notes. The mystery remains in how she has created a physical body apart from her actual form. Hane kept rambling about that. The real Kurama is sleeping, yet we've seen her fight before. Hell, she nearly destroyed Konoha before. Tenten remained silent as Naruto continued to eat. Her reservations remained despite the books, claiming that specific facts could be misinterpreted to paint a darker picture than what is happening. He did not necessarily disagree with her, but his recent experiences Ama forced him to believe the accusation. You could ask her. No. He shook his head, placing the chopsticks back into the bowl. I am not ready to confront her again. You have to go to sleep eventually. Tenten's face softened into a look of pure concern. You've been up for over 28 hours. We need our Hokage well rested for the events to come. At least take a nap or something. Then, when she enters your dreams, ask her about the sage and how she got a body. Think of this like a sleep mission for the village. Her infectious smile forced a matching one on his face. I'm the one that's supposed to assign missions. Then assign yourself a mission to take a nap. Tenten hopped from the recline. Sleep right here. I've got some reports from T. He patrols around the cathedral that will take about an hour to read through. I'll wake you up once I'm done. Neither savannah nor forest greeted Naruto upon his entry into the dreamlands. He stood in a stone chamber lit only by dim torches but full of humans dressed in the pelts of animals and decorated with jewelry fastened from bone and jade. They circled a large fire pit in the center of the room underneath the circular cutout that allowed the smoke to drift into the night sky above. Their speech and chants, utterly alien to him, told of a shared pleasure of life boarding on maddening ecstasy. He tried to grab a hold of one of the people but found that his hand had passed straight through. This memory is of a time far more recent than the previous one. Ama's voice came from a crude bas-relief carved from obsidian. It depicted a strange, hunching creature with the head of a goat, multiple human breasts dripping with milk, and paws from a canine. They found my doll in a conquered temple and returned it to their city as a treasure. But, unbeknownst to them, I was interested in their primitive ways and reached out. Why? Curiosity. They were different than the other civilizations that inhabited the jungles. These people preferred to look to the stars instead of making an unjust war upon their neighbors. In the many unspoken years between my RST encounter with your ancestors until now, only a handful of groups managed to catch my eye enough for direct contact. A couple emerged from a side chamber. Their lavish crowns signaled their royal rank when compared to the others. The king raised a scepter above his head, silencing the room with a single word. He glanced at his queen briefly before leading her to the bas-relief and forcing her to the ground. Then, he began to chant a mournful prayer that the others joined with tears flowing down their faces. The queen simply stared at the statue of the goddess, dazed and dumb to the song around her. Once the king stopped singing, he brought the scepter down upon the back of her head rapidly until only a ruined mess remained. The onlookers cheered and started dancing once more. Naruto watched as the king joined the celebrations. Do you require all of your worshippers to offer up a sacrifice? What happens behind closed doors at your cathedral in Konoha? There was a momentary pause as the memory around him froze. He looked at each person's twisted faces of fanaticism and found himself revolted to be part of the same species as these people. It sickened him to think that such activities were happening in his village. But, then again, these were the same people that thought it socially acceptable to shun and abuse an orphan. Despite believing itself the bastion of civilization, Konoha was little better than the savages dancing around a fire. You have figured it out. With a little help, an understatement. His mind would have refused to make the connection without outside help. Were you ever planning on telling me? Another pause. When the time was right, everything would have been revealed to you. Who told you? Hane Hyuga. Apparently, one of your crazy cults killed her brother. She has been obsessed with you ever since. Naruto maintained his composure despite the urge to lash out. Only the desire to gain information and the hope of all of this being a misunderstanding kept him calm. You've lied to me. No. The memory vanished instantly, replaced with the forest that seemed far less beautiful than before. Ama appeared from the tree line in a sprint that ended with her pulling him into a tight embrace. I have never lied to you. I have not told the entire truth, but that is not lying. Naruto wanted to believe her. But for the village's sake, he remained focused on gathering information. You still sought to deceive me. An admission of the truth is just as bad as a lie. You caused the death of Sasuke and Shikamaru. You've caused the death of untold millions with your cult. At least tell me why you did. Why do you do what you do? What are you? Amma closed her eyes and released him. You're planning on marching on the cathedral. HMPH. Hane warned me that you could gain access to my thoughts during these little visits. Yes, I know the hurt you're feeling right now. Amma disappeared into the forest once more. My feelings for you are genuine, Naruto. You are very important to me. Everything I've done has been for you and those you love. Naruto's mask of passivity started to crack. Liar. Use the last bit of trust you have in me, Naruto, and take my advice. Gather those closest to you and leave Konoha. Go to the mountains, far away from the civilized world. And wait for me. Depart from this world and await the coming of the new one. Shut up. If you order your forces to march upon the cathedral, you'll enter the new world covered in blood. Himawari stared at her father with tears streaking her face. The day started bad enough with a thunderstorm that woke her up early. Things got worse when Uncle Kiba cooked breakfast, which looked more like dog food than people food when her mother left for an emergency meeting with the rest of the clan. Boruto did not return home from church, so she spent the day coloring and trying to teach Akamaru how to speak. Around lunch, her mother entered the house without a smile and ordered Kiba to find the suitcases tucked away in the garage. Now, they were at the in station with a bunch of Hyuga waiting for the train that would take them away from the only home she ever knew. How will I go to school tomorrow? She did not want to miss a day of class. Her friends would miss her too much at recess. The thought of them being sad made her sad. And where is Big Brother? Shouldn't he be coming too? Her father chuckled warmly in the way that always made her feel better. No matter what happened, he radiated confidence that made her brave. Well, you're going on a vacation for a little while. The whole school is closed right now, but you'll be back in class by month's end. And brother, a momentary shadow passed over her father's face like a cloud blocking the sun. He is needed for a special mission. He'll be waiting for you when you get back. I bet he'll take you out for ramen even. He better. Himawari huffed and crossed her arms. Her brother had been a real jerk lately, so she expected him to make it up to her. An all-you-can-eat ramen dinner seemed like the perfect beginning. Will you and Mom be waiting for me? Of course, we will. Naruto flashed a grin and raised his thumb, looking like the very definition of cool. I plan on taking quite a few weeks off once you return. Hell, I might even take you with me on a visit to Suna. Himawari's eyes widened at the thought of seeing Uncle Gaara and the stupid-looking guy that played with dolls. Really? Did you already ask Mama? Damn straight. She said it was A-okay. He paused and glanced at the train. It's time for you to get on. Why can't you come? Because I got to do paperwork. You will have a lot of fun. Trust me. She tried to smile like he did but could not fight back the tears that kept flowing. Will you miss me? Of course. I'll miss you every second until you come home. Naruto placed a single kiss on her forehead. I'll be right here waiting for you when you come back. Make sure to be a good girl for your aunt. Things might get a little boring in the country but don't cause any trouble. Himawari nodded and glanced at her ever-stoic grandfather. He did not wear the standard robes of the old PLE but instead came to the platform dressed in battle armor that she had only seen in pictures. I wish you could come too, Grandpa. It would have been nice to see the old estate, admitted Hiyashi with a slight sigh. Then again, my bones don't do well with long trips. You younglings are far more suited for trains than I am. Will I ever become old? If you're Futunate. Hiyashi closed his eyes. We cannot delay any longer. Join your aunt. Yes, Grandpa. Himawari took her father's hand and stepped up into the carriage. She looked at her father and grandfather one final time, trying her best to memorize their faces. More tears rolled down her face at the thought of leaving them behind. Naruto glanced around his office, remembering all the memories made in Ronton behind the desk that predated Konoha itself. As a boy, he played many pranks on the elderly third Hokage and suffered through just as many lectures. His time as a genin saw him report to 3 different Hokage, starting with the third and ending with Kakashi. The day he became Hokage saw him entering the office not as a ninja but as the leader of the entire village. He felt no shame in the number of tears that he shed upon realizing that he had accomplished his dreams. This was going to be the place where his story ended. All forces are in position, Lord Hokage. Tenten, wearing her panda mask, appeared kneeling before his desk. The police have closed the garden district and placed snipers on the rooftops across from the cathedral. Our ninja teams are in position awaiting your arrival. The cult has gathered outside in prayer. A few have weapons, and a handful of ninjas are among their ranks. Nothing that we shouldn't be able to handle. She hesitated but regained her composure. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted. Are you sure you're up for this? Tenten paused but hurried to continue upon noticing the hurt look on his face. I mean, given your personal connection to Kurama. He appreciated the concern but dismissed her comment with a wave of his hand. As Hokage, this is my responsibility. My village is being threatened. It would be a poor show if I did not lead the charge in protecting our home. Is Boruto among the crowd? No, sir. It is believed that he is with a Yame inside the cathedral. Tenten stood and approached the desk, removing her mask. If worst comes to worst, I'll personally capture him. I promise nothing will happen to him. Naruto nodded, thanking the gods for granting him someone like Tenten. Excellent. Hopefully, we can do this without anyone getting hurt. I have Granny on standby at the hospital to treat any wounded should things go south. Smart move. She bit her lip. And if Kurama appears? He was waiting for that question. Tonari, Hane, and I will handle the problem if it arises. The look of doubt on her face made him frown. Kurama has no chance of winning against the 3 of us. Despite her lack of sanity, Hane has studied many ways to confront Kurama. Tonari and I are no strangers to fighting foes wielding awesome power. In truth, their plan was little more than a general strategy of dismembering the physical form of Kurama. Too many questions remained to formulate something more in-depth. Hane's research into the sea ult that destroyed her life yielded little regarding what Kurama's capabilities were. His knowledge of the tailed beasts, given to him by the Sage of 6 Paths, was now dubious at best. If all else failed, a sealing array could contain the fox once more, assuming that her power was limited in her physical form. It seems like you've thought of everything. Tenten sighed and took a seat, tossing her mask onto the desk. And you are still planning to resign? Naruto nodded and glanced at the rough draft of his letter to the daimyo. The decision to step down from the office of Hokage had lingered in the darkest corners of his mind ever since the divorce. Marching upon the cathedral and, as a result, a sizable portion of the civilian population was a move that would doom his political career in the eyes of the populace. At best, the daimyo would strip him of the title and grant him a small severance to live the rest of his life in peace. But, if things got ugly, the executioner's blade would soon taste his neck. Yes, it is time that I focus on my family for a while. Himawari desires more time with me, and Boruto will need proper guidance once freed from the cult. He filed the letter away, planning on finishing it once everything was over. Tenten nodded as he spoke, a small smile pulling her lips upwards. Then, Lord Hokage, please accept my resignat. Ion from active duty effective the moment you leave office. Don't throw a promising career away for my sake. Naruto leaned back in his chair, frowning despite her smiling. Within a few years, I guarantee that the daimyo will consider you a possible candidate for Hokage. Don't you want to be like Tsunade? I used to. However, my loyalties are more with you than Konoha. She shrugged and placed the panda mask on her face. Let's get this over with, Lord Hokage. I'm ready for a long bath. Those gathered on the rooftop of the famed Konoha Hotel and Ballroom, across from the cathedral, stared at the gathered crowd below. Men, women, and children stood together in prayer and song, some waving simple banners decrying the coming crackdown on their civil liberties and others wielding makeshift weapons. A handful of ninjas joined the crowd, with the highest ranking being a jonin that Naruto only remembered in passing. Those would be the troublemakers in case things went south. Luckily, the police snipers and Anbu had them marked for death when the situation turned ugly. Last chance to call this off, advised Kakashi, who had been critical of the operation. Since hearing about it 3 hours before, we can withdraw the riot teams and let sleeping dogs lay. Hane, whose presence was required but not wanted, shook her head. If we walk away now, we might as well consider the city, nay, the nation, a lost cause. Is Hiyashi's team in position? Naruto closed his eyes and battled the growing pain swelling within his skull. Kurama's warning cons, Tantley repeated as if she was speaking with him directly. A part of him, much more significant than he would admit to anyone, wondered if he could take a handful of important people and leave Konoha beyond as she asked. He had tried to save the world from itself but only managed to become another cog in the machine that demanded blood. But would things be really that bad if Kurama took over? Maybe it was time for a fresh start. Lord Hokage. Panda touched his shoulder, breaking him free of the trance. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm alright. Naruto took a deep breath and steeled his nerves. Is Hiyashi's team in position? Kakashi sighed but nodded. The Hyuga is awaiting your command in front of Ichiraku. Excellent. Send the word. A single flare shot from a nearby rooftop shot into the sky, signaling the beginning. Canisters of tear gases descended upon the crowd as the riot police moved forward. Loudspeakers ordered the people to disperse or risk arrest and imprisonment. Prayers and songs pleading for salvation turned to screams as the crowd's morale wavered under the attack's bluntness. A few brave souls attempted to organize a proper defense but fell under cruel blows from the office's batons. Makeshift incendiary devices were unleashed from behind the crowd, setting fire to the gardens but not harming the officers. Those ninjas who threw air allegiance to the cult found decided to flee instead of fight. Naruto jumped into the square, surrounded by his bodyguards and those selected to join him in bringing Ayame and the other leaders into custody. He watched with a forced indifference as a woman, some civilian that reminded him of Hinata, was beaten into a gory mess by a trio of police. Only the thought of the cult managed to keep him grounded enough to push forward through the sea of suffering surrounding him. Slowly, the team reached the steps leading to the cathedral. Most of the protesters had fled into the side streets or the waiting arms of the police blocking the districts. Those not part of the warrant he issued against the cult would be allowed to return home come morning. Naruto gestured to the doors of the cathedral. Ayame and the others are possibly inside. Have we heard anything from the Hyuga team yet? Nothing, sir. Panda shook her head. I've tried hailing them, but they've not responded. I'll send a runner to check up on them. Naruto placed his foot on the first step and reached out to sense how many people were within the cathedral. He felt around 100 individuals inside. None of them save a handful held chakra signatures that suggested formal training as a ninja. While he should have felt relief, Kurama's warning still repeated in his head. This seemed far too easy. Send a runner to check on them, he ordered with a quick glance at Panda. Have all the other entrances been blocked off yet? Anbu squads are covering the rear exits. They have nowhere to run. Excellent. He climbed the steps to the door and searched the exterior for seals or traps but found nothing. Then, he began to speak, channeling a bit of chakra to his vocal cords. Ayame Ichiraku, we have the building surrounded. Open the door and surrender. No response. Ayame, let us put this entire mess behind us. This church isn't good for anyone. He-ho. Pet an emotional plea would break the woman's resolve. Remember those years ago when we would eat ramen in the park? Your father would prepare us to-go bowls using his special broth, the one only for special occasions. He would never tell us when he would make it, making it a surprise every time. Nothing. Naruto felt his heart sink at the inevitability of losing another precious person. He, who vowed to protect those he loved no matter the odds, had failed again. Breach. The single word spurred his ninja into action. 3 shinobis approached the door with explosive charges. At the same time, Akunoichi prepared a genjutsu that would knock out the congregation inside. Anbu climbed the walls and waited for the final command to enter the cathedral through the stained glass windows. Those ninjas behind him prepared to rush inside and overwhelm anyone not caught in the genjutsu and foolish enough to stand against him. Each man and woman prepared a gas mask. Go. The charges on the door exploded in a flash of red and blue, blowing the wooden doors open as if they were made of paper. Green mist flowed into the opening as the genjutsu was unleashed on the nearest worshippers. The Anbu smashed through the glass and unleashed a barrage of grenades filled with tear gas. Naruto strode into the chaos with his soldiers behind him. Unlike the others, he did not need a mask to protect himself from the gas, thanks to the enhanced healing factor of his Uzumaki blood mixed with the gifts from Kurama. Ayame Ichiraku, you're under arrest. Submit and face the consequences of your actions. He marched down the cathedral's center past the pews of choking and dazed worshippers. Once decorated with sweet-smelling candles and flowers, the main altar held only a single statue of the red goddess with her arms held out wide. Ayame, along with a handful of priests and priestesses, knelt before it. Naruto paused as he noticed the genjutsu fading far sooner than he expected. A cold chill ran down his spine as the air in the building grew suddenly heavier. A quick look over his shoulders revealed his once bold ninja looking uneasy and ready to flee at the first sign of trouble. Even Kakashi, a veteran of multiple wars, seemed humbled. We can still walk away from this, cautioned the former Hokage. We've broken up a riot and made our point. No need to continue this. We're ending this tonight. Naruto approached the altar and the worshippers, noting how each one seemed to be in a trance. Ayame Ichiraku, you are under arrest. Surrender peacefully, and no harm shall come to you. Stand and place your hands on top of your head. Ayame shook her head and ignored his request. Harm. There is nothing you can do to stop the coming of the goddess. She walks among us already, Lord Hokage. Things have been started that not even you can stop. Whatever. Naruto took a fistful of Ayame's hair and pulled her up. The woman did not struggle but whimpered at the roughness. Kakashi, secure the rest of the leadership. He reached for the radio on his belt. How's the situation outside? Sector has been cleared, and all resistance has been neutralized, the police chief's voice crackled over the radio. We're currently processing the people who have fled. Most of them are not putting up too much of a fight. Excellent. Keep up the good work. We've secured our targets and are withdrawing. Once we're out, send in the riot teams to clear the civilians. He returned the radio to his side. Panda. Any word from the Hyuga? Nothing, sir. My runner isn't responding either. Panda shook her head, muttering behind her mask something Naruto assumed to be an insult to the stuffiest clan in all of Konoha. It did not matter. With Ayame and the clergy of the cult locked away, the cult's influence in the village was shattered. There would be a nasty aftermath in the morning. And weeks of meetings with national officials demanding an explanation for his actions. Those cultists outside of Konoha would launch protests, calling for his resignation and action from the Fire Daimyo. Ayame's business would be seized by the civilian council and redistributed to investors in chunks. Naruto led the march out of the cathedral, quickening his pace to avoid being around when the congregation's days wore off. He maintained a firm grip on Ayame's wrists, opting to avoid placing seals due to the time it would take. Years of physical training as a shinobi meant she had little hope of breaking his grip. Something doesn't feel right, hissed Hane, adjusting the sights on her rifle. Where is the sleeping one's avatar? It should have been here. Maybe it got scared and ran off. But, unfortunately, Panda's light tone did not remove the anger building on Hane's face. This has been easier than I planned, Naruto sighed. It doesn't matter. We've broken the backbone of the cult. Whatever Kurama's plans were, they're ruined. Let's get these people to Anbu headquarters pronto for integration. Hiyashi Hyuga remembered his fear when his wife died after giving birth to their second child. He remembered the fear when his eldest daughter was kidnapped. For many years, there was an ignorant comfort in believing that no situation could introduce him to a fear he had never felt and overcome. The last hour, however, showed him that things beyond his understanding could inspire a terror far more agonizing than anything he could have imagined. Death stalked the halls of the Ichiraku ramen restaurant, and he knew it was only a matter of time before it found him. Lord Hiyashi, his bodyguard whispered into his ear. They had fled to a broom closet once the slaughter began. The screaming has stopped. Allow me to check if a passage is available for your escape. Now, at the hour of his doom, Hiyashi could admit firmly how much he hated how the rest of his clan talked. He prayed that Himawari, who he prayed would eventually take over whatever remained of the Hyuga, would introduce some lightheartedness in the Stuffy family. Perhaps she would finally put an end to the many issues that plagued their people. The thought gave him some degree of comfort. What else could a man at the end of all things have but hope? Do as you please. He closed his eyes as the man slipped out of the broom closet and began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Inhumane howls echoed throughout the corridors. The screaming of his bodyguard began 13 seconds later, leaving only the wet sounds of a body being torn to pieces. Whatever abominations that the cult had made enjoyed mutilating their victims. He theorized that it was some zealous retribution against those who stood against their blasphemous goddess. But, unfortunately, they had the strength and speed to match their zeal, slaughtering most of his forces within the first 2 minutes of the ambush. Hiyashi remained still for the longest time, listening to the periodical screams of his kinsmen. Eventually, they would find him and grant him a death unfit for even Earth's worst criminals. A small shard of pride bristled at the thought of dying in a dirty broom closet. What would his ancestors think of his final moments? If he was to die, he wished to fight like a man. With fresh determination, he summoned the final ounce of courage left within and pushed the door open. The dim, buzzing lights above showed blood-smeared walls and victims' discarded limbs. The ambush occurred on the second floor, deep enough into the building to prevent his team from escaping. In the chaos, he fled down an open hallway and up the stairs. He guessed that this was either the third or fourth floor of the complex. Perhaps, he mused hopefully, there was a window somewhere that would grant him escape. The chance of managing to avoid attracting one of the creatures was slim, but the Hokage needed to know what happened here before. The first hulking monster appeared down the hallway, announcing their presence with a low growl. Another, slightly smaller and more feminine in appearance, appeared on the opposing end of the hall to block his escape. But, unlike before, they did not charge immediately but stared at him with 16 unblinking eyes. Fleshy tendrils waved in the air, each tipped with a bit of bone. So be it. Hiyashi slipped into a battle stance and waited for the attack. None came. Are you cowards as well as mutants? A musing coming from a Hyuga. The sultry voice danced through the air around him. It carried a wave of pressure that created a whirlwind of terror within the deepest parts of his mind, awakening a primal fear that pleaded for him to return to the closet. Before his legs could move, the creature had his throat in her claw. Answer my question, Hiyashi, and I will allow you to leave. Her talons pierced his neck, drawing blood from painful but, unfortunately, non-lethal wounds. Where did you send your granddaughter? Himawari. The creature wanted Himawari, the sole hope for the future of his people. Desperate deviance replaced fear. He D not allow his granddaughter to be found, no matter what happened to him. 2. The Hyuga Estates, in the western part of the country. Liar. The creature slammed him against the ground, snapping his legs like cheap noodles. She continued to speak despite his wailings. I have already been there. None of your kind dwells there. Where is your granddaughter? Where is my child? You will never have her. Hiyashi summoned all his rage and spat in the monster's face. She and my people will soon be long gone from this world. You might have victory over humanity, but the Hyuga will live on. He expected death to come next, hoping that he would be able to face his ancestors with dignity. The creature, however, seemed more humored by his declaration than enraged. Those dark, hate-filled eyes shined with a new emotion utterly alien to Hiyashi. She released him to the ground and brought a claw to her wrist for a single cut. Your kind are too predictable. No matter how far you go, I will always find you. A trickle of blood, far thinner than human blood, almost like water or broth, poured from the cut. Kill me, groaned Hiyashi, the last of his will faded. He was ready for release. The creature tilted her head with mocking innocence. Kill, no, I want you there to see my family reunited. She gripped his head with her free arm, bringing the blood flow to his lips. I want you to be an example for all of wayward humanity. There will be death for you. The sweet-tasting blood slid down his throat with revolting smoothness. He tried to cough it back up but found that his body was already working against his mind. The creature stepped away from him, the wound on her arm already closed and healed, and smiled. Then, as his body began to twist and reshape itself, Hiyashi watched as a light shimmer replaced the monster with an all-too-familiar shape. To walk the path of the Red Goddess required sacrifice and perseverance. She, mother of mothers, demanded everything from those who served her. Likewise, the path would take everything to test the faith of those who walked it, allowing only the most devoted to reach the end. For those who gave both mind, body, and soul, there was an eternity in paradise in the light of the goddess. It was not a path that most could tread, and many faltered into a bottomless despair once revealed to the cosmic mysteries. Those strong enough to withstand the madness of transcendence gained a glimpse into ultimate reality. Priestess, it is almost time. Ino glanced over to her husband with a sad smile. This would be their final private moment together until all things came to an end. She loved him truly, and his faith in the goddess made her love him even more. As a girl, he imagined that Sasuke would be her husband in a final triumph over Sakura that would forever make her the winner of their silly rivalry. The goddess decided to give her a far superior mate in the form of Sai. Now, at the climax of human history, she was the one with a husband while her old rival sat alone despite winning Sasuke's heart. Are the chosen prepared? Yes. I have briefed EAC-H1 on what needs to be done and ensured their payloads are primed. Excellent. Ino examined the explosive laced vest Sai wore instead of his everyday black outfit. She felt jealous that he got the chance to prove ultimate faith by being a martyr but quickly pushed the thoughts away. They all played a small part in the greater plan, and her role gave the goddess information. Are you ready? Of course. My life for her. Sai brushed her cheek with a gloved hand. I'll be waiting for you in the new world with our son. What do you think it will look like, love? Many faithful asked the same question. But the scriptures never gave a concrete description beyond referencing it as a land of eternal spring. She liked to imagine that there would be fields of flowers surrounding a golden city where the faithful would forever live. Still, she knew this was more of a personal answer than one sanctioned one. Whatever it would look like, she trusted the goddess that it would be worth the cost. What does your heart tell you it will look like? Sai tilted his head for a moment before smiling. Everyone we love will be there. Shin and your father will be eager to meet us. The thought of her son finally meeting the grandfather who only existed in pictures nearly brought tears to her eyes. Her entire family would finally be reunited in a world where they could use their gifts for good causes. I know father will adore you. Come, let us begin the mass. Husband and wife emerged from their bedroom and into the dimly lit storefront turned into a makeshift church by order of their high priestess. At first, Ino failed to see the wisdom in taking so many faithful away from the main cathedral at such a critical moment but finally understood once reached her that the Hokage stormed it in a futile attempt to crush the faithful. These 20 gathered in front of her would be the retribution against a world run by power-hungry elites that robbed their families of a future. She looked into the eyes of each man and woman wearing a vest similar to her husband's and could feel nothing but pride. Brothers and sisters, she began once in front of the hastily done painting of the Crimson Queen courtesy of Sai, we join our voices together one final time thanks to the Holy Mother. Praise be her name, the congregation responded in a unified voice that drowned out individuality. Glory to she who awaits awakening. Glory be her name. Tonight, each of you will face their final test of faith in carrying out the blessed orders of our High Priestess. Failure is not an option. The salvation of all souls depends on your success. I am aware that among our flock is one that has not had the chance to receive blessed communion. Sakura Uchiha emerged from the group laden with the explosive vest and a photograph of Sasuke in hand. Jade's eyes, once full of life, looked forward without a hint of emotion. Her husband's death shattered her world but gave her the chance to be brought into the church before it was too late for ultimate paradise. Sadly, her daughter was not chosen as one of the 20 to spark the flame that would consume the old world. The high priestess originally wanted me to wait another week, Sakura muttered as all looked upon her. However, she gave me the chance to earn salvation through martyrdom. The situation was an odd one, and Ino wondered if her old friend was worthy yet to receive the blood of the goddess. Do you believe in the Red Goddess? I do. Do you believe that the Scarlet Scripture is mankind's only hope for paradise? I do. Do you reject the world in favor of the promise of a better one? I do. Come forward and kneel. Ino removed a small goblet from the glass altar prepared by her husband, along with the ritual knife. She sliced open her wrist to fill the goblet to the rim with fresh offerings before handing it over to Sakura so as not to spill the holy content. It is written in the Tulites Codex that the goddess first connected with humanity by giving her blood to our forefathers to satiate their thirst. This tied our souls forever to her infinite self in a bond that remains strong even to this day. We honor this covenant by recreating the ritual. Sakura lifted the goblet to her lips to take in a mouthful of blood. Her face twisted, unable to hide the repugnance to the coppery taste. Those around her placed gentle hands on her back to ease the liquid down while muttering prayers, asking their goddess to guard the newest member of the flock in the trial to come. Encouraged, she quickly downed the rest of the goblet eagerly, much to the congregation's pleasure. While late to the party, Ino felt OD knowing her friend had finally arrived. We have contacts. Naruto stared at the radio hanging from his belt with a raised eyebrow as the police commander's voice rang out. The customarily collected man sounded panicked. He flipped the transmission switch and brought it to his lips. Repeat. Multiple contacts coming from all directions. There was a static sound that drowned out the rest of the message. But he heard the faint sound of singing over the electrical whine. Finally, after a long pause, the commander responded with the alarm still thick in his voice. More protesters. Be advised. Numbers greater than estimated. Wonderful. Just when everything seemed to be going in his favor. The Anbu and police that followed him into the cathedral busied themselves with the arrests by dragging the prominent leaders of the church to the vestibule for quick verification. He wanted to ensure that no charismatic preacher remained free after the raid to stir up trouble in the village after the night's trauma. He ordered that each person taken into custody be verified by chakra signatures. His team moved quickly, but a dozen more prisoners were still awaiting processing. Those with no warrants were herded into a side room to be contained until after they left. A few tried to resist but were brutally put down with truncheons and fists. Give us another half hour. Deploy reserves. This is not good. The sleeping one should have been here. Hane grabbed his arm, pulling his attention from the prisoners to her insanity-filled eyes. Destroying its avatar is the critical part of this mission. These vermin are nothing without their false god. We can't fight what we can't find. Naruto broke free of her grasp and stepped back to put a safe distance between them. The last thing he needed at the moment was more of her paranoid ramblings. While he needed her help, the woman still scared the crap out of him, with his trust being near zero. If not for her knowledge, he would have ordered her thrown into a cell or out of the village. Panda, I need a status update on the Hyuga now. Said Anbu paused her rough sing of a crying priest and placed a finger on her communication device. She shook her head and muttered something under her mask. Nothing, sir. He is not responding. My runner has just arrived at Ichiraku. I'll let you know the first moment I hear something. Gods help me. I need a fucking aspirin. She won't let you take me. Ayame stared at him with tears flowing down her face. A small trickle of blood ran down her face where he had thrown her to the ground. You've brought this on yourself, Lord Hokage. Your world will end tonight. Naruto rolled his eyes at the zealot garbage being spewed. Whatever. You should have stuck to making ramen. Your son will succeed where you have failed. He has seen the light while his father remains blind. Now that's an interesting topic. Naruto grabbed a handful of her hair and pulled up. She whimpered at the pain but remained defiant. Where is Boruto? She has taken him somewhere safe. He's been selected to be sheltered from the coming storm. He slammed a fist into her face, shattering her nose in a bloody spray and earning a pitiful cry. Where is my son? Answer now, and I won't have Ibiki skull fuck you. Death simply hastens me to salvation. I'll keep that in mind. Naruto tossed back onto the ground and stepped outside into the night. As ordered, the police had formed a tight perimeter around the cathedral's main square to block any attempts at retaking it. Those initial protesters remained on the ground, either incapacitated or with the unlucky ones lying in a pool of their own blood. He forced himself to stare at the casualties as a form of repentance for failing to act sooner. The thought that this could have been prevented haunted him, and once he was free from being Hokage, he knew that would be the hardest thing to overcome. He looked towards the stone faces of the past Hokage and wondered what they would have done in his shoes. Tonari landed beside him with a small smile and touched his shoulder. Good evening, Naruto. Ain't nothing good about it. The Moon Man's youthful appearance was still creepy even after all these years, and his habit of keeping his eyes closed made it all the more difficult to converse. At least it was better than staring into the empty sockets where his eyes used to be. Have you seen any trace of Amma? No, it seems to be hiding from us. Tonari frowned and looked towards his home far above them. Nor have I heard from the other members of my clan. Are you sure involving other Otsutsuki was a good idea? Besides the old sage, your entire clan has tried to destroy the world multiple times. It's not long ago that you tried to blow everything up and marry Hinata. I had reservations about reaching out to them. Tonari admitted softly, yet, the Sleeping One is a threat not only to this world but every world. We have a common enemy. For now, once this threat has passed, we'll deal with the Otsutsuki together. Have you heard anything from the Hyuga? Nothing. I almost regret asking Hiyashi for help. I understand your frustration. He is a difficult man to work with. I nearly ignored his initial plea. Why did you agree to come down here? I thought you wanted to keep your distance. What is it that your people say? Drastic times call for drastic measures. The Sleeping One seeks to undo the world that the great sage Hagoromo built. I believe Lord Hamura would have come down to prevent that. Tonari's face twisted with a look of conflict. Naruto, there is something I have to tell you about. Lord Hokage. Bad news. Panda sprinted from the cathedral towards him. The Hyuga team has been. The first explosion ing out from the hospital across Konohagakure. The second and third targeted the Hokage Tower and Anbu headquarters, respectively, in roaring blasts that illuminated the night in a second dawn. Seeding detonations echoed throughout the village, though Naruto's mind could not register their locations as one far closer sent him to the ground as a wave of molten air washed over him. He heard Panda cry out and soon felt her body on top of him as a fleshy shield as another explosion thundered nearby. The riot police soon began to join in the chaotic symphony of screams that sang terror around him. His hand reached for the radio on his belt but found a fresh, searing wound that stained his fingers crimson. The pain of the shrapnel took a few seconds to slither up his nerves to the brain and, once registered, filled his world with agony. Above the screams, he heard the beginnings of a new battle, with gunfire and jutsu clashing against unknown foes that howled with fury. His mind swirled as Tenten, whose panda mask was lost in the confusion, hauled him to his feet. She yanked him towards the cathedral's entrance with a sword in her hand. Kakashi appeared in the doorway with eyes full of surprise. What the hell is going on? The Hokage is wounded. Medic. We need a medic. And Anbu rushed to his side to begin treating the wound, yet the pain continued to climb to new heights. This was not the first time he had suffered such an injury, and he knew that death lurked around the corner, waiting for a chance to claim his soul. He wondered if it would be Iza to submit like Sasuke and Shikamaru had. We need to move him now. It's too deep for me to remove here, advised the Anbu with a desperate shake of his head. He'll need surgery. Move him where? The hospital is gone, dumbass. Tenten looked down at him with a trembling lip. Don't worry, Naruto. We'll get you some help. Hold on, and don't give up. That's my ninja way. Kakashi stepped out into the frenzied night. We have an issue, guys. Of course Tenten sent a sharp glare to him but froze mid-sentence as she followed his pointing finger to the figure S. Standing across the square staring at them. The monstrosity was a surreal fusion of fox and human. 9 red tails twisted and writhed like mating serpents. Inky black eyes set deep in a vulpine EAD swirled with the reflections of stars and galaxies, hypnotizing and entrapping. She wore no clothes and proudly displayed her multiple sets of breasts in all their bestial glory. Her fingers extended into elongated, bone-white talons that already dripped with the blood of the police who vainly tried to stop her advance. Ayame stood kneeling at her side with both hands raised up in praise. Tenten. Kakashi's sharp tone snapped her back into reality. You need to get Lord Hokage somewhere safe. If he dies here, the village, the nation, is doomed. What about you, Kakas? I watched the creature flex her claws in preparation for the coming battle. He shrugged slightly and removed a small orange book from his back pocket. The remaining Anbu from the cathedral lined up behind him with their weapons drawn. It's time I finally finish my book. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.